who is going to be doing the first session on the 12 steps and how they use that 12 steps in their relationships. I've heard them share on the 12 traditions, and I have never heard them do the 12 steps, so this is really going to be a treat for me. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Sue and Keith, and I don't know if you're going to both stay at the microphone together, or are you going to... Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love you. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Keith.
Hi, Keith. And I'm a grateful member of the Al-Anon family group, and I'm Sue.
Hi, Sue.
My sobriety date's May the 11th, 1976, and for that I'm especially grateful. I'm glad to be able to do this, and it's always a special privilege to be able to share the steps and traditions and what we've done and how we've used them in our life. They're a part of our life, a way of life. And it's always good to do this. I read something in my meditation the other day that was quite, it just kind of stepped out to me, and it said something to this effect that, my experiences are mine, and I can't give them to you for you to use unless you know I care. And I do care. I wouldn't share how these steps have affected our life if I didn't care for you. If I was so selfish that I could work the steps and the traditions and confine them to my life, I wouldn't need to do what we're doing here today. We've experienced something as a result of these steps and the literature that we've, taken from the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon and applied in our life, and it's worked. And I say that in a sense of, we've been together for 35 years, we've been married for 33 years, and our life is totally, absolute, and totally different for the last 19 and a half years than it was for the 13, 14 years, or what have you, prior to that. We went together for 2 years, regularly, steadily, and then we got married, and we've been married for 33 years. So these steps in this way of life has totally changed everything about our relationship with each other, and our outlook on life, and our attitude about life. So it works. We have a family. We had one daughter during the active disease, and that daughter has been in Al-Anon and Al-Anon for 19 years, and she's applied the steps in her life, and the books and the literature and this way of life in her life, and not only has she become a complete and totally different person, and had a good, successful life and a happy life and lives a happy life, productive life today, but her relationship with her mother and father has completely changed, and from a terrible, terrible, violent, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, everything you can imagine, to absolute and total forgiveness, acceptance, and has been able to take, as a result of these steps, into her life and get married and live without all the carryover of the confusion and the trash out of the active disease. So if there's anything that these steps have done, is taken people that could have very easily said we were victims and moved us out into the mainstream of life and allowed us to function as human beings, healthy human beings in relationships as a family, relationships in work, relationship with our groups, and our neighbors, our community, everything about our life. And, it's change. The steps and what is outlined in the literature here has been the primary guidelines to change. Now, we were in Oklahoma last weekend, and we had an opportunity to go back there for an Al-Anon convention. There was a lot of old-timers there, long-timers, old-timers, people in Al-Anon and AA. And we had an opportunity to talk to people who've been here 30 and 40 years and seen things go over and over and over and change over and over and all those kind of things. And one of the most important things is that I got last weekend. We had a little book study with some people who are very knowledgeable with the book, and I've been here 19 and a half years, and I know all this, but the reason I like to do this is because there's things, affirmations that I've filed away and heard it when I was 1 year sober, 2 years sober, 3 years sober, and then I kind of, I guess, rest on my laurels, and then things come up, and I reach back and I get the important things and pull them out and put it to use again. And many times due to surrenders, And one of the most important things that jumped out at me by being with people that have been here a long, long time last weekend is that, particularly in talking about Alcoholics Anonymous, and Al-Anon is a big book thumper. And if you want to know anything about disease of alcoholism, why, you go to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's where it describes it. That's the textbook for the disease of alcoholism. And one of the important things that was really hammered into us and really jumped out to those of us who got to go through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous somewhat last weekend is the very first. Now, I'm not a historian on Alcoholics Anonymous or anything. I don't memorize a lot of things, but the very first Alcoholics Anonymous ever, and Al-Anon is only 44 years old, and AA is 55, 60s, and so the very first Alcoholics Anonymous, was the big book Alcoholics Anonymous. That was before fellowship. There was two drunks, and they documented this. They needed something to work from, a textbook. They were not stupid people. They were educated people, businessmen, bankers, what have you. And they put together the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the text. And the guy explained it is really not sure what had happened, but some guy come out of a nut ward and wandered in a room where they were trying to name this thing, and they had all these various names they were going to assign the book, and ultimately they couldn't come up with something that didn't conflict, and this nut walked in and said, well, I've been looking for you guys for a week. You're really anonymous, and I'm an alcoholic. And they said, why don't we call it Anonymous Alcoholic? And then they said, no, why don't we call it Alcoholics Anonymous? And that's so the story goes. The historians seem to think that there's a possibility. That's the way they got it. So that was the very first Alcoholics Anonymous ever. And from that, they started Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Point is, the very first Alcoholics Anonymous was the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So there are two Alcoholics Anonymouses, just like there's two Al-Anon. The first Alcoholics Anonymous is the book. The second Alcoholics Anonymous is the fellowship. So if you're trying to stay sober or sane on the fellowship, you're doing it the hard way. The easy way is to use the book and the steps, because that gives you a prescribed definition of how to bake the cake. And they even explained this very simply, as they said, in this book, when they wrote this book years and years and years ago, they gave a percentage. Of course, there was fewer and fewer, but they gave a percentage. And I take this in this room, this percentage, this small room. In this book, followed this prescription of this book. It says that 100% of the people who come here, of that 100%, 50% will stay and recover, following the directions of this book. 25% of the other 50% will drink and come back, and 25% will go and die. And I guarantee you that our programs are watered down today to the point that it is nothing like 75%. You're lucky if you get 1 and 2%. And that's what jumped out at me last weekend, listening to people with 30 and 40 years put this into application and bring it back. And so that's why I care. I think we've done something. There's been something missing. There's something that we've made it a social thing. Whatever we've done, probably because there was an influx of people and whatever, we got those percentages way down. And I care about those percentages. And so I share what we've learned in this book and what we've come to understand from these steps. The one thing that I'll share real quickly on step 1, and then Sue can go. The big book came first, and the 12 and 12 came second, the traditions came third. I do not study the 12 and 12 without following it along in the big book. I do not study the big book without following it along with the 12 and 12. If you listen to people who are very knowledgeable about the big book, the stories and stuff, this is divided up in certain steps. When I read the 12 and 12, I have to go back to the big book. So I study them both. In our home group, we have Monday night, have a 12 and 12. We have a 12-step meeting. On Wednesday night, we have a book meeting. And when I go to the 12 and 12 meeting, I take my big book and I follow it, and I go and reference points to the stories in the big book. Whenever I study the big book, I take my 12 and 12 and I go through it because it's a whole package. And they found as they did the book, then they found they needed the steps, and then they found they needed the tradition. So I follow this. It's very important to me to share with you that one of the things that I recognize about a period of 4 years that I drank in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, I tried to take the second half of the first step without taking the first half of the first step. And in my relationship, for me to come into this relationship of you as a fellowship, this book as a text, and my family, and try to fix the unmanageability of my life without admitting that I'm powerless, I could not stay sober. Ironically, we were talking just a few minutes before we started this meeting, and Jim and I outside, and we were talking about he was telling me about a guy that got up and talked, and he was 10 years sober, and after he got through talking, he run all this stuff out, and the guy's sponsor got up and said, "You're going to drink again, and I can tell you when." And the guy said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're going to drink again, and when you're going to drink again is you're going to run up against a surrender which you will not surrender to. That's when you're going to drink. And what you're going to say right before you drink is this: screw it, nobody cares, and even me." So that is the point of step one. I had to become powerless. That is the most important reference point to my entire program, to my sobriety, to my relationship, or anything else. I had to become powerless. And if you look on Bill's story on page 5 in the big book, it says, "Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation, and there were periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hope." That is the great lie. That is the true and false. And until I could do that in my relationship, do that in me, do it with my men, friends, sponsors, whatever, that powerlessness was, I'd try to work the second half of the first step. As soon as I get my life in order, boom, 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 we'll be fine. And I stayed drunk over and over and over and over again. Once I rendered it powerless, it's a reference point for everything in my life. I am powerless over my relationship with my wife. I am powerless over anybody else on the face of the earth. The ABC says that. Once I accepted that I'm powerless and I surrendered, then I have a power greater than me. And the primary purpose of this is to help me find a power greater than myself. And once I could do that, God worked on the relationship, and then we could go into the second half of the first step.
Hi, I'm Sue. I wondered when I got here why they had the same first step as in Alcoholics Anonymous, because our steps are the same. Alcoholics Anonymous gave them to Al-Anon, and I wondered why, because we don't have a problem with alcohol. And what Keith was sharing earlier about us being in Oklahoma and the power that was at that conference was unreal with all of the long-timers that were there. And what I have to realize about these steps and the teachings that I got is a foundation that I have to stand on the rest of my life. So what I learned in the beginning, and if there's any newcomers in here, it's the effort and the willingness that you put into these steps in the beginning of our lives that we will stand on for the rest of our lives. And I have 19 years in this program. My sane date is May sometime, which tells you how sane I was, of 1976. And I have to realize that when I came in here, I was crazier than a loony bug. And the reason I feel so strong about these kind of things in this program is because, like Keith was sharing, with the AA Big Book being AA and the fellowship being another AA, it's happening in Al-Anon too. It's a popularity contest in Al-Anon. It's PTA in Al-Anon. And that's not why I'm here. I need this program as much today, 19 years later, as I did when I walked in the doors of Al-Anon. And that's why it is so important to me today that I am so grateful that I had the strong sponsorship in the very beginning that gave me the basics, that gave me the steps, gave me the principles, because I stand on them today. And so if you're sponsoring someone, it is so important to get them into the steps and the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, in my opinion, because that's where we came from. And I love this program so much, I don't want it watered down. There's going to be a few of us around here that will try to keep Al-Anon exactly the way it is. And there's a lot that are going to go on the other side of the street, and they're going to have fun and yuck it up over there, and you're going to feel lonely over here because you're doing the foundation. But the secret of longevity in this program is that the path gets narrower and the crowd gets smaller. That's why you do not have a lot of long-timers in this program, because people come around here to get their life better, and I'm happy and I'm joyous and I'm free, and now I got to have fun. Fun is a byproduct of applying these principles to our lives. It will automatically come. The happiness, the joy, the freedom will automatically come if we have a strong foundation. And when I got here, it's because I wanted the secret, and that's the first thing it says in the first step in the Al-Anon 12 and 12. I wanted the secret for sobriety. I'd run out of all my answers. All my old ideas were not working. I had no answers, and that's why I feel that I became powerless. I was powerless over alcohol because I didn't know what was going to happen to my husband when he drank alcohol. And I did not have the power to make him do anything anymore. I'd lost that power because he didn't listen to me anymore. He did not mind. It says our schemes and threats had succeeded only in our being physically and emotionally exhausted. We were powerless. We were asked to admit that and believe that if we wanted to make progress and improve the quality of our lives, we had to admit that we were powerless. And that's why I love the ABCs in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, because it says in there, no human power can relieve their alcoholism. And I believe that that is one specific place in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous that is talking about Al-Anons. No human power can relieve their alcoholism. I had to realize that I did not have the power to relieve his alcoholism, and that my life was unmanageable because every time I focused on him or whatever it was that I got obsessed with, my life became unmanageable. That I gave him more time than I gave my own self. I thought of him first before I ever thought of me. Therefore, my life was going to hell. No wonder I felt bad about myself. So I had to admit that I was powerless. Number one, I can't get an alcoholic sober. I can't keep an alcoholic sober. An alcoholic's sobriety is not my answer. Because when he got sober, I remained nuts. And he wasn't doing stuff, and I went crazy the first 6 weeks of this program. And then I made a commitment to myself that I can't make it on one meeting a week. And I have to go to 2 and 3 and more Al-Anon meetings every week, or I start losing it. And I don't want to do that. That scares the hell out of me. I don't fit in this world without these steps. And my life will start becoming unmanageable.
In step one, and this is a very important thing with a relationship, because a relationship is an obsession. An obsession is an idea that overpowers all other ideas. And I had a relationship with alcohol. I also was trying to have a relationship with a wife. And so I could be obsessed with my wife, but I would drink and become obsessed with the alcohol. And so then they would become confusing. And that's why for the alcoholic, and why it says in step one, he had hit bottom as truly as any of us. John Barleycorn himself had become our best advocate. That's at a point where alcohol became my obsession. Over all other things, I could promise her anything, and then alcohol would take over, and my obsession was alcohol. Why all this insistence that every AA must hit bottom first? The answer is that a few people will sincerely try to practice the AA program. Maybe I should read that again. The answer is that few people will few is not very many, will sincerely try to practice the AA program unless they have hit bottom. Now, isn't that strange? The answer is that few people will sincerely try to practice this program in a relationship unless they have hit a bottom. For practicing AA's remaining 11 steps means the adoption of attitudes and actions that almost no alcoholic who is still thinking can dream of taking. So if you put that in a relationship, as long as I think I can control this relationship, I'm not going to work the next 11 steps. And I changed the words in a step, and I changed that simply because if you go at the bottom of that paragraph, we stand ready to do anything which will lift the merciless obsession from us. And so you have to do what's required in the next 11 steps. Step 2, based in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and Bill's story, very simply on page 9, they had told of a simple religious idea and a practical program of action. So surrender is a simple religious idea, and then it outlines a program of action. And step 2 is came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore us to sanity. To be restored to sanity is humility. I cannot have a relationship with anyone, much less my wife, unless there's humility in it. I am powerless over that. I have to allow her to be herself. I have to allow you to be yourself. And that in itself induces humility. See? That induces humility. If you haven't taken the first step, you get in and you try to control. You get in and you try to control. And so it doesn't work.
In Al-Anon, I had to believe, I had to look at myself and see what I was doing that was causing me the insanity in the thinking in my life, which is talking about the obsession. And my obsession was the alcoholic. You had to let him go. How do you let him go? And in reading in the AA, the Al-Anon 12 and 12 in the AA Big Book, one of the things that I got out of that in the second step is that in both Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon literature, it talks about how intelligence is not our answer, but can be our enemy. And so it's talking about surrender, and I believe that Al-Anons have to hit that surrender, just like every alcoholic does. When you get to the bottom and you just give up. Because the last drunk in our home, it's like, that was my bottom. And I looked at Keith and said, I don't hate you anymore, but I don't love you either. And you got to do what you got to do. I didn't care. I didn't stand there and fight over who gets the house, who gets the car, who gets the kid, who gets the checkbook. I didn't care. I just had to get out because I couldn't live that way anymore. And that's a bottom. And so I had to learn that a power greater than myself could restore me to the sanity. Once we admitted that, it says in our book that we begin to grow. Once we admit the powerlessness, once we admit the unmanageability, then we begin to grow. That's ready to say, okay, I've got an answer. There's something that's going to help restore me to sanity, and accepting that. We needed more than the human experience and intelligence to solve the problems of living, especially living with an alcoholic, whether drinking or not. It doesn't matter. It's all up to me. And so I have to believe that there is a power that's not the alcoholic, but there is a power that cares about me enough that's going to help me start this walk down this path that is going to lead me to some kind of sanity. And it talks about humility. So it's at this point that some humility started coming in my life, because when I first got just a smidgen of humility in my life, it's when I said, help me.
That's the part in the second step where sponsorship comes in. For us, We could not work the second step without getting a sponsor. How can I ask a power greater than me to restore me to sanity if I don't have guidance? I went to churches. I had all these simple religious ideas about this thing, but I had no direction. I had nobody explain it to. Will you guys open those windows? Everybody's sleeping. I may want to. And so without doing anything with the sponsorship, I can't do this second step. And there's an amazing thing. I always tie page 68 in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in with the second step, because on page 68 there's something that I missed I guess you don't miss it, but there's things that happen and you wonder why and blah, blah, blah. And I kept thinking, God's will, when the second step's first time we talk about a power, God, power, God, higher power, all that kind of stuff. And so what I was doing in here was I was looking for God's will. Okay, God, show me your will. And that is not what this thing's talking about. If you look on page 68 in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, what it says in here, we ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. See, and for a period of time, I'm trying to say, okay, God, show me your will so I can do it, and then I'll be what I'm supposed to be. And that's that philosophy that I could make decisions in my relationship that said, well, God wants me to do this.
Yeah, right. Nothing's sicker than a newcomer's higher power.
And what God wants us to do, I heard it said this weekend that responsibility is having the attitude to respond to God's will. See? And so that's a change of attitude. Step 2 is a change of attitude. And one of the things that we talk about in here, true humility is only, when you get to step 3, it's talking about, in the big book, talks about getting on your knees with another human being and doing step 3. That brings another human being in for you to use as a witness that you got on your knees or got in a position, God up here, you down here, and you let somebody else see you do this. Now, I did this in church all the time, but I was doing the congregation thing, so I was hurting. But to get with somebody else and get personal. And the same way with step 5, and the same way with some of these other steps, and same way with my relationship. True humility in my relationship was for me to let my family see that I, the king, was asking for help. And the buzzword for that was sponsor. And they told me I needed a sponsor so that an idiot wouldn't be running my life. An idiot had been running my life for 36 years. And so that was the thing that showed my family that I'm willing to do it a different way. They were so used to me doing things and failing that the sponsor was a new word. It was a new direction. And it was pointed out, and we all got sponsors and we followed direction. We didn't argue with that. When we come to believe that a power greater than us could restore us to sanity, the faith and the strength that was coming from that was that we're taking somebody else's ideas and putting them in here and trying to do it like them. See?
And the insanity of an Al-Anon is you hear it so many times, you can't tell me what to do. Now, why do we feel so strong about that after we come to this program and we ask for help, and now we're looking for a power greater than ourselves to restore us to sanity when we gave all that power before we got here to an alcoholic and the disease of alcoholism drove us nuts. And we came here and we said, help me. And then we say, no, you can't tell me what to do. And it totally contradicts everything we come here for. And if you're sponsoring somebody like that, say, wait a minute, and take them right back to the first step. Take them right back to the first step and say, I thought you were powerless because I didn't have a God in my life when I got here. So a power greater than myself was sponsor. And that's going to lead me on a road to the third step. Once I get this sponsor, that sponsor is going to start me on a path that's going to introduce me to a higher power that is a power greater than any human being. But when I get here, I'm still relying on human beings as my higher power. So in the very beginning in this program, my sponsor was my higher power. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that if you have chosen strong sponsorship in your life.
One thing Sue and I were talking about just recently, because there's something in the area of relationships that's coming up. People are having trouble with relationships because they have conflicting sponsor direction. And you can do that. I mean, I was so sick that I picked sponsor in the very beginning that was sick like me. Sick attracts sick, just like relationship. You come in here and guy and gal can get together, and if they're sick, they attract sick. You come in here, and if you're sick, you can find somebody in AA that's sick, or Al-Anon that's sick, that'll co-sign you're sick, and you can ask them to be your sponsor, so two sickos are going down trying to sponsor. I mean, I've had some very sick sponsors. And I look back on it and I think, my God, it's amazing I stayed sober. You know, which in itself lets me know that God was in that thing, or I wouldn't have, because some of my sponsors are drunk. I had a sponsor that blew his head off. I had a sponsor that got drunk, and he was directing me. See, and I thought he was doing it. So there's a very important thing that comes in step 3. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. And at the very beginning, when I turned my will and my life over to God as I understood Him, was a sponsor. And sometimes a group.
And this is the first place that we see God. This is the first place in our program that it talks about God.
On step 3, page 35, once we have placed the key of willingness in the lock and have the door ever so slightly open, we find that we can always open it more. The door of the sick mind opens from the inside. There is no keyhole on the outside. If it were, why churches and psychiatrists and all kinds of well-meaning people, families and loved ones, could open that door and put the answer in and you'd be fine. The door to the sick mind opens from the inside. And so sponsors and people who try to help us have to trick us to get us to open that door just a little bit. See?
So that's what sponsors for. To me, my sponsor in the very beginning was in my life to make me feel bad. And I'd tell her that. You make me feel bad. You hurt my feelings. And she'd say, good, because we're here to save your life. You know how to handle the bad feelings. We're here to save your life.
We were listening to a tape of my sponsor. My sponsor is Jack Sullivan of Louisville, Kentucky. And Jack's over 33 years now, something like that, a little more. And Jack said, you know, if you don't want to help me to help you, I can't help you. Jack told me the other day, he said, here's the role of a sponsor. Get this straight and tell it exactly like I told you to the people you sponsor. I talk, you listen. When you quit listening, I quit talking, and we're done. If you ask me to be your sponsor, then I share with you because I care for you. When you don't want to listen to me anymore, we're through talking. It's over. I can't sponsor you anymore. See? And what that did in a relationship is we were trying to sponsor each other. Let me talk and you listen. And that's what got her sick.
Nobody was listening.
And so nobody was listening. See?
And we go to AA speaker meetings together when we was new. That's the only place we could get along. And on the way home, I'd tell him what the AA speaker meant, so he'd get it. And I know you guys have done that, too.
It wasn't what I heard at all.
So we'd argue about that. But at least we were arguing about something new, something positive. We were having an argument about something positive. This is what they meant. And it wasn't like, you did this, you did that, you're not going to drink, you're not going to screw around, you're not going to do this. We was arguing about program stuff. And so something was getting in, because we was trying to prove to each other that this works if you'll only hear it right. So we were both convinced, we was both been surrendered. And it says, to learn is to recognize, reach out, accept, and act. And that's the third step. That's humbly made a decision to reach out, recognize, accept, and to act. On what? On this way of life. on this way of life. It says it's a spiritual gift. And it is the beginning of turning it over, letting go and letting God, and all those kind of things. It's our motivation to work the rest of the steps, and it gives us hope because it says, if we do this, it is ours alone. Nobody can ever take it away from us. Okay.
One of the things that's really important to establish the first 3 steps is the powerlessness, and that somebody greater than you is going to help you. And God talks through people. And the important things that we found through that 3rd step, I was told, I try to do the 3rd step in my car going down the road and drive and talk to God and, all them things. And I still do that, but my proper position with God is me on my knees and Him in the right position. And I got 24 hours in a day to live. If I can't get God the proper concentration in that, at least 10 or 15 minutes, in 24 hours, well, then I don't care about God. I can tell you, I can watch people I sponsor, I watch them, and they'll, I'm a great, Sue and I both advocate of meditation. And I can watch people, and they get sober after a period of while, and they quit doing their morning meditation, they quit doing that. I can watch them, they start getting crazy, And I'll tell you what, I've watched guys that are sober 10, 11 years, and somewhere between 3 and 4 and 5, they quit doing their morning meditation. By the time they're 10 years sober, they're absolutely nuts. They're crazier than they were when they were new. I mean, it's unbelievable, because they ease it out and the self-will comes in. And in the meditation of the first 3 steps, the thing that has held our relationship together, we both have morning meditation individually. Exactly. We have got on our knees and did our prayers. We got in the proper position to bring God. We brought God into that bedroom. We brought God into the kitchen. We brought God into the bathroom. We brought God into every area of our life.
The thing that I used to love about a man called Gene Duffy in Alcoholics Anonymous, he talked about the must. And if you go through your Al-Anon 12 and 12, there are must in the Al-Anon 12 and 12. It says we must change. We don't suggest you change. You must change. And 3rd step, it says, 3rd step suggests, I teach myself from this moment on to be receptive, to open myself to help others with the help of my higher power, and to the help which may come in many forms, often through other people. The people in this program in the very beginning and on any given day are still my God that just has skin on it. My God works through people.
The 4th step is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, and it's an amazing thing. We were listening to sponsorship tape coming up here, and my sponsor was talking about fear, and living on fear. And fear was in every area of my life, and the first thing, it made a searching and fearless moral inventory. In our relationship, everything about me, in my relationship with myself, with my God, with my wife, with my daughter, with my fellow man, was motivated by fear. And one of the little things that happened to me is to help me overcome fear was having hope. And what you gave me is a vision beyond my present circumstances. When I came here, I had nothing going for me, and so I had present circumstances. We live this one day at a time right now, and here I got this relationship, and it's crazy, and these are present circumstances. I'd be glad to quit drinking as soon as I get the circumstances. That's where I come back and try to work the second half of the first step. I have to have a vision beyond my present circumstances. And you stop and think about it. How do you get a vision? If you're sick in the mind and you got an obsession, how do you get a vision beyond your present circumstances when they tell you to live right now? And by doing this 4th step, gave me a vision beyond my present circumstances. When I did my 4th step, it allowed me to step out of that fear and see that it's possible for me to have something better beyond my present circumstances. I didn't have answers to my present circumstances, But you said if I do this 4th step, it'll show me the patterns that create the insanity of my present circumstances, and maybe if you can help me change that, then I can have something better. And so my excitement was not about running in there and doing this 4th step. My excitement was the fact that you gave me some bait. They used to have them dog races where I grew up, and they always had a rabbit or a carrot simulated in front of the greyhound, and they'd have these dog races, and this mechanical rabbit would run ahead of the dogs, and the dogs would chase that. And so the 4th step was the first bait that you gave me that I could have something beyond my present circumstances. So at that point in time, I put my relationship on hold of my present circumstance. I put my relationship with my family, with my God, everything on hold. And I said, okay, I'm going to get in here and work on this 4th step. And that is going to help me see that there's something better down the road. I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous because I wanted to stay the same. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous because I wanted to be different. One of the things the old-timers tells us is that there's all kinds of people out in that world who don't have a conscience, but an alcoholic has got a conscience. A real alcoholic has a conscience, and I knew that alcohol had changed me to something I didn't like. I knew it had made me something. I had fell in love with this lady, and it had made me hate her. See? I fell in love with people. I always loved people. And alcohol had made me hate you. I heard it the other night, one of the guys in my home group. I've said it for years. I came in and out of AA, in and out, and I said, a belly full of booze and a head full of AA is terrible. I'll tell you something that's worse. A head full of AA and a belly full of resentment. And I came in here with a head full of AA and a belly full of resentment. And this 4th step took care of that. The 4th step is the laxative for resentment. Always will be, always is. Even in the 10th step, go back to this. Always will be, always is. When you're bow locked with resentments, the 4th step is the laxative for the resentment.
Isn't that neat? What an analogy, but it's so true. It's something we all understand that people out there don't know how to explain it to us. The Al-Anon 4th step, the blueprint for progress, was introduced to me as a way to do the inventory. And I can remember reading a question in there, and it's a question and answer session. I said, yes, no, maybe, sometimes. And I remember thinking it had a question, how long has it been since you've been to the dentist? What has that got to do with my drunk husband and the violence in my home? What has that got to do with me being crazy, other than I didn't know how to take care of myself? The 4th step is the tool that shines the light on the true source of the problem. What's the problem? And they used to say, every time you look in the mirror, you see the problem. And I couldn't get it that way, so my sponsor, bless her heart, got me into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 4-column inventory. And that's the way I did my inventory, and that's the way I give this step away to people I sponsor, because it has the 4 columns. The first column is the resentment, the 2nd column was the cause, the 3rd column is how it made me feel, and the 4th column was what part did I play? And I wanted to feel better. I did not. Up to this point, Keith had always been the problem. And on any given day, I was the victim. And I wanted to grow, and I did not want to be the victim anymore, because everybody's always saying, this program is full of volunteers. There are no victims. Nobody held a gun to my head and said, you got to marry an alcoholic. It was my choice. So what was there about me that caused all these problems in this marriage? Because you're saying it's me. So I wrote Keith's name down. The 2nd column was the violence. The 3rd column is it made me feel like nobody, like I didn't count and all that kind of stuff. And then I couldn't think of the 4th column. And my sponsor told me to get on my knees and ask God to put the words in the pencil that I needed to see. because I didn't want to be a victim anymore. And I did that, and I'll never forget when I got up, it was like watching a video. I could hear it, I could see it, and I'd say, blah, 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 and shake my finger in his face, and he'd say, get out of my face. And I'd take one step closer, and he'd say, Sue, if you don't get out of my face, I'm going to hit you. And I would take one step closer, and he'd hit me. And I thought, my God, it was me. I caused the violence in that home. If I'd just walked away and kept my mouth shut, none of that violence would have happened. He told me to quit, and I couldn't quit. I was no different than the alcoholic can't quit drinking. I couldn't quit getting in his face. And that's how important that step is to me. It pointed out every one of my character defects that was causing my husband and I to go opposite directions. Once I saw that fourth column and my character defects and all the things that I...
Without provocation. But we invariably find that at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later places in a position to be hurt. I had to get out of the way, and that's where a sponsor comes. A sponsor's the thing that was able to say, listen to me, you are obsessed. A sponsor became a noise louder than my brain. A sponsor became a noise, a distraction that's louder than her. Hey, look over here. It distracted me, and the door opened, and bam, they shoved the answer in. See?
And the thing with Al-Anon's about the fourth step that I couldn't understand, it says fearless. I wasn't afraid of nothing. I told my sponsor, I'm not afraid of nothing. And when I realized that, that became my greatest fear. And I couldn't realize. And it was just a couple of weeks ago, I finally, in the middle, after 19 years, I was in the middle of just rage. I just wanted to stand and scream and hit somebody. And I realized in the middle of it, what I was afraid of is another member of Al-Anon. And I was afraid for her. And she couldn't hear, and she couldn't see. And I was afraid for her. And I got angry, and I thought right in the middle of it, my God, it is fear. This is fear right now. And it only took 19 years for me to be right in the middle of that anger and recognize fear at the same time.
One of the things in the book that's very important, and like I say, there has to be some bait here. If you don't think this is going to make it better, if you just think I'm standing up here telling you about what's happened to us, and yet it doesn't apply to you, let me throw some bait out. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous on page 62, what it says in here, very simply, most good ideas are simple. Okay? And this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arc through which we pass to freedom. And what I wanted more than anything, I want freedom of alcohol, and I want freedom of this obsession of this thing I've married. And if I can have that, then I can have freedom of myself.
I didn't know you was obsessed with me.
Absolutely. And that means I've just made amends. I wanted out, baby. I wanted out of this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And yet what I recognize is I thought if I could let go of the alcohol, then I could let go of her, then I'd be free. And that's the arc is that I let go of me, and then I don't have a problem with alcohol or her. Alcoholics always act and react in opposites. And so I had the freedom had to come within, and then I'm not obsessed. See, I'm not obsessed. So one of the things that happened in step 5, and it's a very important thing, and I think step 5 is vitally important because to me that's the guidelines of relationship. It's the beginning of any relationship. If you have not built an arc with a sponsor, how are you possibly going to build an arc with a him or a her? And so there are about 20-some points of reference in step 5 on how to build a relationship. Guidelines that you must first do with a sponsor before you can do it with anybody or anything else. Isn't that amazing? And so many people come here and they want to go out here and build this relationship with him or her or them or that, and then come in here and work step 5. And that's really sick. It's really sick. And I see it that people come in here and get a relationship with a sponsor, and they think they've built an ark, and they haven't. I'm going to tell you something. If your sponsor is your God, you don't have an ark. You're not free. If your sponsor has to make every damn decision in your life, you're not free. And my relationship with Sue, let me tell you something. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, Sue and I had been married a number of years. As sick as it was, baby, I knew I loved her. Something down inside. I know that today. No sponsor is going to destroy my relationship with her. No group's going to destroy my relationship, and consequently, God is not going to destroy my relationship with her. We've changed sponsors because sponsors did not complement our relationship. But we have had to let go of things and ideas that sponsors suggested so that we could have that relationship. It's a paradox. As long as I'm not going to, in other words, the first 3 and 4 steps, we're talking about strong sponsorship and all this kind of stuff. But let me tell you something. Me and her are together. We've been together 35 years. So the search through the first 4 steps has been for sponsorship that supports our relationship. Not sponsorship that's trying to push that relationship away or make us choose. See? So we have sponsorship that supports our relationship. And what that means is that sponsor supports our program and not squeezing or pulling our relationship.
If this program says that this program puts families back together, why would you ask somebody to be your sponsor that doesn't talk about that?
That's what we're talking about.
And in step 5, the thing that was so important to me, it says, first we admitted to God. And the 5th step was the one that I was the most afraid of. Because I knew God knew, and I didn't want to tell anybody. But once I tell another human being, the jig's up. And so that's what I was afraid of. And I went to my sponsor's house. We did the 3rd step together. We knew God was in the room. And then the second thing that is so important to this, that gives us the freedom, is the first thing we do when we start reading that 4th step is that we admit to ourselves for the first time out loud in front of somebody else. It's the humility that starts coming into our life. It humbled me to sit there and look another person straight in the eye and say, yes, this is who I am. And once I was ready to admit out loud to somebody else, knowing God that was in the room, this is who I am, I knew the next thing that I had to start doing was changing. Because now somebody knows all my character defects, somebody knows all of my patterns, somebody knows everything that I do to manipulate him. So when I call her the next time and say, he's doing this, he's doing that, and I'm going to do this, she's going to say, oh, no, you're not. Because that's your character defect. He's doing just fine. Leave him alone. And I used to ask her, whose side are you on anyway?
Let me run through these things real quick. And in step 5, in the 12 and 12, there's 23 guides to a relationship. And if you don't get this down in step 5 with what you're trying to do in the steps with a sponsor, whoever, that's why I don't believe you can go do step 5 with catch a squirrel off the street and say, let me do it.
It says right here in our Al-Anon 12 and 12, do not choose a family member or a close relative or the alcoholic.
Right.
Big mistake if you do that.
Well, ultimately, to have a relationship, you have to be open. So, essentially, if you get into a relationship, and if really and truly your first, you come in here with the infatuation, the lust, and so the lust turns into, something you're trying to make permanent, and then it becomes communication, you will essentially do a 5th step with that person. But you can't live without being transparent. See?
But when I was new and I first did my inventory, I hid it from him, because if he'd read all of that stuff being new like he was, it would have been like pouring salt in a wound.
Yeah.
He knew it, but he didn't need to be hurt by it.
See, one of the things was...
And as we heal, we can hear things about each other because we're working on acceptance of who we are.
When we fought, we threw all this stuff out. What can I say to hurt you more?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't have to drink together to do that. I mean, relationships that just started this morning can do that this afternoon. See? But what I had to do with this step is that I had to... The values of what I'm going to read to you in step 5 here is it brought the truth out. The truth. So a lot of things we say to try to hurt somebody if they think they're hurting us, the truth weeds it out. So if you look in the 12 and 12 of the AA 12 and 12, the very first rule of love, we not me, is they all deflated our ego. So in any relationship you can't have ego. You can't have a relationship with somebody and have ego at all. There is no, that's where the tradition is so important. There's one ultimate authority and it ain't me. Okay, the next one is peace of mind, long-term relationship. You can't have a relationship without peace of mind. You can't have. You either love or you hate. You either love or you hate. You either attract the things you fear the most, you attract the things you love the most. The second part of a long-term relationship, I'm reading out of 12 and 12, page 55, we cannot live alone with our pressing problems. We, that's the second most important part of any relationship, is a we. We. Has to be two. We.
I want you to do this and I'm going to do that. Yeah. We do stuff.
Any relationship has to have something that's vitally important. If we have swept the searchlight, you cannot have a relationship if you start the relationship out with secrets. I can have secrets of the past in my 5th step, but I cannot have a relationship with her today if I got a secret today. Every time I pick up a secret and I don't communicate, my secret could be as simple as me thinking, you may think you want me to do this, but I am not going to do this. So I allude to the fact that you can convince me that I'll do it, but I'm really not going to do it. So I got a secret.
And it can be just as simple as, I got to run to the store, how much money you got in your wallet? And you got $20 in your wallet and you say 5.
Okay, on page 56, right, page 56, even AA old-timers sober for years often pay dearly for skimming this step. They will tell how they tried to carry the load alone, how much they suffered of irritability, anxiety, remorse, depression, and how unconsciously seeking relief they would sometimes accuse even their best friends of the very character defects they themselves were trying to conceal. My relationship with her, if I'm doing that with her, ain't going to work. Right there is no more games, man. No more games. We don't play those games anymore in this relationship. There are no games in this relationship. We got communication. That's the 4th little gig there. Okay? And if you're going down on that same page, it says, everybody had to confess his own. And that's the 5th truth about you. Me. Here's how I feel. This is what I believe. This is what I'm thinking now. And this is what I'm doing in step 5, but these are guidelines for a relationship. The 6th one is at the bottom. Most of us would declare that without a fearless admission of our defects to another human being, we could not stay sober. And that's the acceptance of me. I have to admit that to her. See? The 7th one is we get rid of our terrible sense of isolation. How can you have a relationship if you got a terrible sense of isolation? See, you learn that in the 5th step. The 8th one is over on page 57. That's one reason we loved alcohol too well. It did let us act extemporaneously. You cannot act extemporaneously in a relationship because you're building secrets again and lies. Where is it? The 7th one, where are we? That 7 is that one, loneliness. Loneliness? You can't have loneliness in a relationship. That's where I found the difference between aloneness and loneliness. If I have a relationship with Sue, I can have aloneness, but I don't have loneliness. And the eighth one is down
Same
here.
thing with your God. You
Right.
can be alone by yourself, but as long as you have a God in your life, you're never alone.
Right. Our moral inventory has persuaded us that all around forgiveness is desirable. I have to have that forgiveness in my relationship, or I don't have it. I build a resentment. The next one is no defect can be corrected unless we clearly see what it is. And I found out in my relationship, I have things about me that may be driving her absolutely nuts, but it don't bother me. See? It don't bother me. Little things. Though now recognize our defects are still there, something that had to be done about them, and soon found that we could not wish or will them away by ourselves. Lack of power in that relationship. I can't change her. I either love her or I don't love her. She either wants to be with me or she don't. She don't put conditions on this. My wife has never said, I love you if your home group is. Never. She's never done that. We'd found that crap out before we got here. See? That's what I found out before I got here. You don't put those, she put those kind of demands. I'll love you if you'll go to church. I'll love you if you'll come over to my house. See, those kind of things are still...
It's so funny, the home group thing that Hugh said stuck in my mind. That happens before we get the program. When I was in high school, I lived in Perryton. We fought all the time with the Spearman girls 27 miles away. I mean, that stuff's childish. It's high school stuff. It doesn't matter. We belong to a fellowship, and it's worldwide.
The 13th value for step 5 for a relationship is on page 59. Or anger and hurt pride might be the smoke screen under which we were hiding some of our defects while we blamed others for them. No more smoke screens.
Yeah, right.
You know, no more smoke screens. We did that before we got here. Come on. See? And the fifth, what is the other one? Advise and accept direction. There's a sponsorship value again.
But there's times that we do direction with each other. I mean, I consider it direction. When Keith says, will you do this for me? I don't have time, babe. Would you do this for me? And I say, yeah.
One of the most honest parts of a relationship is on page 60. When we were honest with another person, it confirms that we have been honest with ourselves and with God. That's the key to any relationship. It's what we're learning in here. When you're doing that with a sponsor in step 5, that's the key that gives me the relationship with her. The benefit of talking to another person is what we can get his direct comment or counsel on our situation, and there had to be no doubt in our minds what the advice is. In other words, what do you think? What I recognize in a relationship from this 4th and 5th step is there's values that she has as a woman that I'll never have as a man. And I have to accept that, and there's strength in that. There's places today where I just say, sick 'em, babe, get it. I don't function well there, And, you go on. Our next problem will be to discover that the person with whom we are to confide. And this is the lady. See, this is a relationship. We confide in each other. We have some answers for our serious problems. We have,
and if we don't have them, we go to our sponsors. And then we take the answer back to each other.
The real test of the situation are your own willingness to confide and your full confidence in the one with whom you share your first accurate self-survey. I mean, that's building what is that if in a relationship? If I don't build that with a sponsor, with my 4th step and my 5th step, how am I possibly going to do that with her? If I'm BSing her, I'll say, this is how I feel. She says, no, that ain't how you feel. This is how you feel. No, this is how I feel. And I have to build that confidence.
Most of our arguments before we got to this program, I had to realize because I was trying to change his mind.
One of the great rules of love is on page 62 of the 5th step. Provided you hold back nothing, no secrets, no lies of silence. We had a deal, 25 words or less.
And what that does is builds trust. And it started so simple with me as saying, I'm going to be home by 4 o'clock today. I was either home at 4 o'clock today, or I called him and said, I'm running late. I'll be home at 4:30. that started building the trust in our relationship, because I never allowed myself time, and I never got home when I said I would.
And the last rule of love in the fifth step is, as the pain subsides, the healing tranquility takes place. See? So every obsession, as an obsession goes away, as the pain subsides, as that needy approval and all that stuff subsides, then what do you get? A healing tranquility, and I accept you as you are. And I either love you or I don't. And you're either going down the same road as me or you ain't. And anything that's almost is not. And if we're not going down the same road, and if we don't have people that are trying to help us together and try to, help us go in the same direction of our relationship, we don't have it. I found that out in step 5. And I build on it with my prayer and meditation. Step 6, we are entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. These are things that once I did my 5th step, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that what God's trying to do with me is to build something. To build something out of nothing. Something that was damaged and destroyed when I got here. And I had to recognize these character defects. The most important thing about the character defects with Sue and I was the fact that I had things that I'd done that she didn't like, and we didn't know how to communicate about them. And I didn't know it bothered her. This is areas of the sexual part. People talk about all this sexual part in the thing. I didn't know anything about the sexual part of our relationship until I got to step 6. I didn't find it out in step 5. I did my sex inventory in step 5. I saw some of the patterns in the games. I hated women when I got here because she controlled me. Sex was a misdemeanor. The more I missed, the meaner I got. And she was using that as some kind of a weapon. That's why 98% of relationships are sexually in the beginning and then becomes communication in the end. Whenever it becomes communication, you're not using sex as a manipulating item. And in our relationship, the defects of character there was it was a manipulator. I was a speed freak drunk, and she used to take me to the bedroom and throw one on me because it was a tranquilizer.
Right.
Not because it was passion or love or anything there. It was a control item.
Just get rid of him. Fix him, get rid of him. Yeah. And I had to realize, it was at this point in my life that I had to realize that I had to become a giver and check my motives.
Taking our comfort, it says. That's
And
right at page 67.
is the purpose of this step is we're now ready to accept God's help and to know with absolute certainty that God's ready to work in our life. The defects of character on the 6th step is just a matter to me of making a list of those character defects that came out of my inventory, mostly the 4th column, and I was willing to look at them. To me, that's when I wrote them down, I knew who I was, and I knew what was causing me pain. And I was entirely ready for God to remove them. The way I knew I was entirely ready, because I was willing to follow sponsor direction. I was willing to look at those defects. I was willing to quit doing the things to him and Simone that I'd always done to him.
It's really important to understand whenever you're coming to these 6th and 7th step, and I'm talking about a relationship. You can't make love to your worst enemy. And love and hate won't sleep in the same bed.
I remember we got in the program in May, and my birthday was in August. His birthday's 2 days before mine, and it's our first sober birthdays. And I get him a card and a present, and oh wow, and now he's sober. He really knows that I gave him his birthday present, and my birthday's 2 days later. 4 days later, I go to my sponsor and said, I didn't get a birthday present, I didn't get a card, I didn't get nothing, and he's sober. And she said, you've got to share that with him. But it's not what you say, it's how you say it that counts. And so I said, okay. So I went home and I told Keith, I said, I got a resentment. He said, okay. And I said, 2 days ago is my birthday, and you're sober, and you didn't get me a present or a card or nothing. And he said, well, that's because I had a resentment toward you, and I didn't want to do anything for you when I didn't feel that way. I said, great, that is the greatest gift you've ever given me. And he goes, you're crazy. But it was the first time he'd been that honest with me.
The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells us why we're doing this all along. We're not doing this so we feel good about each other. We're not doing this so we have a wonderful thing. It says our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. That's why we're doing this. We're not doing this. We're not working these steps so that we become the couple.
No. We were not connected at the hip for 3 years, max.
If you look at the power of the third step prayer, it's an unbelievable thing, and I'm grateful I didn't see the power of that prayer in the very beginning because it was overwhelmed me. But I read it and said it over and over again. In the third step prayer, it says, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me, step 6, and to do with me as thou wilt, step 7. Relieve me of the bondage of self, step 1, that I may better do thy will, is what you want me to be. Take away my difficulties, which is my
7.
relationships, that victory over them, which is step 6 and 7 again, victory over these difficulties. What are my difficulties? Misdirected instincts, all those games. The victory over them may bear witness. That's what we're doing. We're bearing witness here this afternoon that these things work. We've been together 35 years. I love her more today than I loved her yesterday. I woke up with a different person today. We're going in the same direction. There was no fight about coming up here. See? We knew where we're supposed to be. We know where we're supposed to be doing. I had 14 things I'd have rather done today if I let any one of them lock in, but I know what I'm supposed to do today. The victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Why? So I can be a better person. That's what step 6 and 7 is all about. So I can be a better person. Step 6 and 7 is about change. Change. I got to want to change. I don't want to be the person that alcohol made me.
It is impossible for us to have a relationship with God, a sponsor, or another human being without working these steps.
One of the baits again, one of the little why you do this, step 7 says, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. Why? So you can become truly happy. It ain't so I'm a better person. So you can be truly happy. It shows. It shows. People that are locked into an obsession, locked in with some kind of a self-will thing, it shows. When you do these things, it shows. There's a light about you. You got things going on. It is the point, step 7, where you get the hope, which is the vision of something better beyond your present circumstances. Step 7 is where you get that.
Humility is becoming teachable. Now I know what's wrong with me. What do I do with it? I give it to God. I give all the bad things to God to the best of my ability every day. And I turn it over, and I work on the positive side to me. That's how I get better. My sponsor said if you work on the negative, you become more negative. But if you work on the positive, you will become more positive. Give hate to God, and I work on being a lover. Now, give greed to God, and I work on being a giver. You can take every one of your character defects and flip them like that, and you give the bad side to God, and you start working on the positive, and change will ultimately happen in your life, whether you want it to or not, if you're doing that.
It says in step 6, it says this is a step that separates the men from the boys.
Oh, a lot of people stop here.
Right here is sponsorship. This separates the men from the boys. In sponsorship, who's the man? And who's the boy? That's why we call them babies and sponsor. I mean, this is the whole gig right here. That's why my sponsor says, I talk, you listen. I'm the man, you're the boy. You're the little child, you don't know how to do nothing. I'm going to share with you. I'm going to tell you that I see you doing something that's going to get you drunk. It's like I shared in the very beginning when Jim's telling me the story right before this. You heard a guy get up with 10 years and talk, and he says, I'm doing great. I don't have a problem in the world. I'll never drink again. As soon as the meeting's over, his sponsor went right to him and said, you're going to drink again, and I'll tell you when you're going to do it. And I'll tell you what you're going to say when you do it, right before you do it. You're going to come to a surrender, which you will not surrender to, and you're going to say, and then you're going to drink. And so this is where step 7 explains that this is a disease of perception. Perception is a surrender that you will not surrender to because you think you have the answer. And this is where I go back to step one. People come to this program under two conditions. One is submission, and one is surrender. If you come here under submission, that means that you have an idea that you know just as soon as you get things organized, you're going to fix it your way. It means that you come here with the illusion that, yes, I have a problem. It has caused some misdirected problems in my life, but just as soon as I get this organized and finish the second half of the first step, I'll get my life organized, then I'll be back in control again. Surrender is coming here understanding that something kicked your ass and you ain't going to fight it no more. And how are you going to keep from fighting it? You're going to get a sponsor that says, don't fight this. Well, I want to fight it. I'm telling you, don't fight it. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. Based on the fact that I have done this before, I'm going to tell you what to do. Because you don't know how to you've got this obsession that controls your mind, and I'm going to tell you how to break the obsession. And that's step 7. Very simply, it says, we had lacked the perspective to see that character building and spiritual values had to come first, and that material satisfactions were not the purpose of living. And who can tell us that but not a sponsor? So by the time you get to step 7, you have done a 4th and 5th, you have somebody in your life that's helping you go in the direction you want to go, that helps you in a relationship complement. Sue had a sponsor one time who was very rigid and structured with her program, but hated alcoholics.
Hated men.
Hated men, hated alcoholics. I mean, I had to be around her 15 minutes. The very first 15 minutes I was around that lady, I knew she didn't like men. She never said nothing good about me. Anything, I said, well, I'd like to do this. Oh, he's just an alcoholic. Yeah. Don't pay any attention to him, you know. Everything was, he's just an alcoholic. And I'd think, I may just be an alcoholic, but I'm a human being, woman. See? And eventually Sue had to change sponsors because that lady was not directing her in an area, in a direction that would put us together.
Everything was, that's his problem. You know.
It's not his problem. We're married. This is our problem.
But I had to grow enough to realize that.
Right.
I had to grow enough to realize that what I was doing was hurting here more than it was helping me grow in this program.
Then she got a sponsor. Her next sponsor was somebody who had a relationship, a family, and they were in the program maybe 10 years, and so everything, it was great. See, oh, hey, yeah, you know, Christmas, oh, family deals, except they weren't doing nothing in the program. I said, that's great, except we're a family, except we're sick.
But what you got to realize about that, I used to beat myself up because I'd hear people say that they had the same sponsor from the time they came in the program until, you know, this day. And I'd think, what's wrong with me? Am I so sick? And I was.
Well, I also know that God has to, you know, I've had 8 sponsors, and Sue's had about 6 or 7 sponsors, and you know, whatever.
I ain't that
Well,
sick.
She asked Elsa Chamberlain to be her sponsor one time, and Elsa said, okay, Beverly, call me tomorrow. So I guess that don't count.
No, that don't count. She never was my sponsor.
One of the things that I've learned in that relationship is that we asked people to help us, and they helped us. And we made some changes so that we change. And if we're changing and we've learned from those experiences, then we can help the people that we sponsor based on the mistake. You don't have enough time in your lifetime to make the mistakes you're supposed to make in your lifetime, and mine too.
See, as a sponsor, I am not so narrow-minded that I think you have all the answers. You know, my sponsor supports me in my program, and if she doesn't have the answers, she sends me to an old-timer that she believes in this program is very strong, and says, go talk to her about it, and then come back to me with the solution. There is no playing games in any area like that at all. My sponsor is very supportive in every area of my life, and the find is in the search. The find is in the search. I had to search for a God, and I've had to search for a sponsor, and I've had the same sponsor the last 10 years.
The thing that I had to recognize in step 7 is vitally important is fear. And what I was really afraid of was a relationship. A relationship with you, a relationship, with the fellowship, a relationship with a sponsor. I'm really afraid of a relationship. And why does my fear come? My fear comes because there's no God. So that's why the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that our primary purpose is to help us find a power greater than ourselves. So I come here, and my relationship, my very first relationship with anything was the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous.
My sponsor used to say, we will know when Keith is grown by the way he dresses and looks, because I'm sure Jim Priscilla remember when Keith always wore a cowboy hat and shades. And they said he was hiding because he was afraid. Yeah, and I remember he gradually stopped doing
what I was saying, stay away from me, I'll kick your ass. I just get you. It's like saying beware a dog. If you see beware a dog and you go over and pet that dog, well, you're kind of ignorant. You're crazy. You know? And so at least I was warning you. I came out of a place where the way I acted and dressed was okay because everybody's like that. It was a dog pen, see?
Okay.
And we're not in that big of a hurry.
Oh, we're not?
No.
Oh, okay.
The chief activator of our defects has been self-centered fear, primarily fear that we would lose something we already possessed or we would fail to get something we demanded. Here I come here and I've got to have a relationship. And I'm crazy, I'm drunk, loaded, all my perception is altered. I got the mentality and the emotions of a small child. I want my way, I throw my temper tantrums. I'm making love to my mother. You know, I'm trying to create passion with a woman that treats me like a mother, and I look and I put the responsibilities on her like a mother. You know, fix me, take care of me, bandage me up, bail me out. You know, how do we feel today? You know, the amazing thing is when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was a bulldozer roaring through the life of trash, trying to push it all up in one pile and make it look like a monument to my accomplishments. And it talks about this in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The way I reacted to things with alcohol and narcotics in me is not the same way I react to things once I sober up. I was a violent drunk, and I came to Alcoholics Anonymous May the 11th, 1976, had my first sober day, and I have not hit anybody since. So where did my emotions go? If I ventilated that anger, if I ventilated all those things through physical violence, and then I sober up, and then I don't hit anybody anymore, where do I ventilate? All of a sudden I'm shoving it inside. I go totally Al-Anon. Sue said to me, you're not going to wuss out on me, are you? I married you, I fell in love with you because you were a man, not because you were a wet noodle. You sobered up and turned into a wet noodle. And I didn't know how to deal with those emotions. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about us as like we come in here, we're like a rubber band. And we gradually unwind. That's why we tell new people, don't get emotionally involved in the first period of time. Give it some time. Because what you're going to do is you're going to wake up one day and the rubber band is unwound a little bit, and you're going to say, where in the hell did you come from? And then the next day you're going to say, oh, I got to have you. And the next day, who in the hell is that? And the next day, that drives them nuts. And all of a sudden you wake up here. I've been a guy that says, come here, bitch. And I'm a guy, help me, help me, help me. What do we do now? I'm this little boy full of fear, sober. The guy came up to me and said, how do you like making love to your mother? I said, what the hell are you talking about? You want me to choke you to death? I don't do that.
And then he said it to me. But it pointed out my character defects, and in step 7 in the Al-Anon 12 and 12, it says to rid ourselves of unwanted shortcomings, we learn to rely on assistance from a spiritual partner.
See,
Number 1's God, number 2 is my sponsor, and who is better to point out our character defects to us than an alcoholic? And I trust him. He's growing in the program. He's trying to get spiritual, but he can point out my character defects to me and teach me more about myself than anybody else.
That's why when I say if you look at step 5, there are all the guidelines to a relationship. And where do they come out? In step 6 and 7.
But the key to sharing with each other in any relationship, whether it's with my sponsor or at work or with Keith or with Simone, my daughter, it is not what I say, but it's how I say it that counts. I can say, screw you, I don't want to do that with you today.
But you have a good attitude about it.
Or I can say, can we do that some other time because I'd planned so-and-so. Now, doesn't that sound better? I didn't know how to talk like that when I got here. I had to learn how to talk to another person.
The bait on step 7 is on page 76, and it says, the chief activator of our defects has been self-centered fear, primarily fear that we could lose something we already possessed or would fail to get something we demanded. Living upon a basis of unsatisfied demands, which is what we gave up in step 2, which is what we gave up in step 3, which is what we saw when we did inventory in step 4, which is what we told another human being that we were going to give up in step 5, which when we got to step 6 said, I don't know how to do it. I want to, I'm willing to do it, but I don't know how to do it. And step 7 says, then we were in a state of continual disturbance and frustration. I don't want to live in a continual state of disturbance and frustration. Any relationship that has continual frustration and disturbance is not a relationship. And step 7 tells me, look at this, dummy. You didn't come here to live in continual disturbance. You didn't come here to live in constant frustration. You didn't come here to this program to live a way of life that you always have to have your way. You came here so you could have freedom, so that you could be what God wanted you to be.
The Al-Anon 12 and 12 says that this is the step that relieves the painful cancer from our soul.
Right. And the key of this thing is on page 76 at the bottom, restored us to sanity. Isn't it amazing that they talk about being restored to sanity in step 7? And they talked about that in step 2. The thread runs through here. By the time you get to step 7, you're seeing the things in your life, of this program life, that are insane. What are they? They're the things that continual disturbance and frustration. I got to have my way. I'm always right. And so what's the next step? Isn't it amazing? What's the next step? 8. And what does 8 have in it? A real human quality, humility. So by the time you're cranking out all your ways and all your character defects are going, they come right along with step 8. And I'm wrong.
Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. This is a step that is a willingness step. We need to do something specific, like take pencil in hand and write down the names of certain people, which means the people that we have hurt. It tells us exactly how to do that to become willing. When I sit there with a pencil and paper, I am willing to do this.
One of the things in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that strongly hits this thing, it says, reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any length, even follow sponsor direction, to find a spiritual experience, which comes through sponsor, people, we, humility. We ask that we be given strength, and that's where the Spirit, give me the strength to follow the directions, do the right thing, and direct to do the right thing. How do I know what's the right thing? If I come here and look at 6 and 7, I got all this 6 stuff, and I think my misdirected ideas are right, then how do I know what's the right thing? See? And I have to go back to that 8th step and look at the wrong things. I have to look at all the wrong things so I'll know the right thing. I didn't come here with any right things. I came here with all wrong things, and I've had to learn right things. I learned the right things by seeing the wrong things.
And in step 8, one of the things that was so important to me is that it talks in the 8th step about it wasn't always the wrong things that I did to people that hurt them, but sometimes it was the kindness, the love, the sympathy, the tolerance that I gave people to get my way. And one more time, in the 8th step, I got to look at how I treated people with my motives. I might have been nice and loving and caring to them, but what was my motives for doing that? I was wrong.
The strength, when I talk about when I was a physically violent person, then I come here and I wuss out, and so the rubber band's unwinding. What I want to be is a gentle person. A gentle person can have a lot of strength. I have the strength that I don't need your approval to feel good about me. And that's what the 8-step teaches us. It says we go try to right these wrongs, but it doesn't mean that I can make you accept it. The strength comes from the fact that I've tried to change. And I try to tell you that or show you that, and what I get is you don't have to give me your approval. God bless the worst things that we go through in all the rest of our sobriety is that needy thing of approval. And step 8 breaks that. It tells us we develop this relationship with a sponsor, and now my sponsor is no longer my God. My sponsor is my director. My sponsor says, this is right, this is wrong, based on my experiences, or I'll show you. Then you get the strength. And what does it say? Step 8, it says, we must not shrink at anything. God, that's strong. Provided I'm going in the right direction. If I take that to say, we must not shrink at anything, and so I'm going to drive my Harley right up your ass. That's not right.
This says we embrace the Al-Anon program. We could take comfort from all we are learning about acceptance, detachment, understanding, and how to love without demanding conformity from others. This is a step that we tell someone, I was wrong, and we expect nothing. When we write those names down, we're doing it for ourselves. We're expecting nothing back.
Step 8 says, 8 and 9 are concerned with the personal relations. First, we take a look backward and try to discover where we have been at fault. I was talking to there's a guy here today that's been in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's always followed some sick relationship out and got drunk. Now he's in a relationship where she went off down the road and don't care where he goes. And he's up here today, and he said, I'm trying to do the right thing.
The 8th step, one of the most important things for me to put a name on that 8th step was mine. I have to make amends to myself through this program by not doing the things to myself that caused me harm before I got here. So I owe amends to myself, and my name goes to the top of the list. The second one on my list was God. I had offended God for many years by doing the things I did, and so God's name went on that list.
It says in here, at the time we complete step 8, we should have developed the following. Very important in any relationship. Good judgment, careful sense of timing, courage, and prudence. These are the qualities we shall need when we take step 9. Good judgment, a careful sense of timing, courage, and prudence. In any relationship. How can I have a relationship with her if I can't? When my wife comes home from work and comes down that freeway and runs in that house, she needs several things before she needs me. She usually needs to pee. She needs to change clothes, and she needs some quiet time, and then I can talk to her. That's a very, very important sense of timing, because I used to hit her at the front door. I need $50. I got the hell, this is going on, and all kinds of, and she just come in, she needs to pee. See? Good judgment, very important thing. Sponsors show you those things. See? Courage, I have to have the courage. And we make this, step 8 and 9 is an ongoing thing. Step 9 is the thing. One very important thing that I had to recognize in my relationship was that in step 9, when I started making these amends, I had no consideration for my family. I'm an alcoholic. I hit the dock with that thing, made my 8-step list, and I'm going to take care of crap here, and I'm going to clean this mess up. And it seemed to me like what she's saying is, I don't care if you take care of all that, but by God, you're sober, and we're not going to suffer from it. Now, that's what I thought I heard. And I thought I heard that because I had a lot of guilt. That is not what they were saying over there. What they were saying over there, babe, do what you got to do. Just stay sober. But what I did with that 9th step was I run out here, and everything I did trying to make my 9th step did not have any consideration for my family. I'd run in there and throw $50 on her and then run out there and pay $100 to some creditor. I run in there and throw $100 on it and run in and pay 25. I started playing all kinds of games. And what the financial amends, I had huge financial amends, and what I recognized was, I'm making these financial amends, and you got a new diamond ring. Don't bitch. But what I'm doing is, I'm doing things in sobriety, working my 9th step that is constantly keeping that same thing that I had when I was drinking. That is that feast and famine. I never stopped doing the things that I was doing in that area of money and those kind of manipulating things. And my family's looking at me, sober, trying to work step 9, and every deal I run, I put everything I had on the line. They never knew if we were going to lose the house, going to lose everything. Sober, I'm doing that. Under the guise I'm making my 9th step. And I come home and I try to have a relationship with my family, and they have the same fear. They're not worried about me drinking anymore, but they don't know when we're going to get wasted out of the house, out of the car. They don't know. I mean, I'm out here taking care of these amends without any consideration for my family. One of the most important considerations in any relationship is consistency and the
perseverance.
Well, to have comfort. When I drank, I mean, it might take all the house payment money or rent money to get me out of jail. And here I am sober trying to do the 9th step, and I have no real consideration with the people that my family. See? My actions are the same. And when I start looking at these people and they're looking at me with that look of contempt and fear, and I'm making my financial amends, I'm supposed to feel good about that. And yet my actions are the same. They don't know. Maybe, I don't know, is he going to drink? Are we going to lose the house? Are we going to lose the car? Is the sheriff coming? I'm doing the same actions. I didn't change. And the point of step 9 is to remember that our real purpose is to fit ourselves of maximum service to God and the people about us. Who are the people about us? The people we're in a relationship with. I took this thing and said, God wants me to hurry up and pay this $250,000 back so I can feel good. And they didn't feel good. The people I was living with didn't feel good about my amends. They didn't feel good about what I was doing.
On my amends, the key to this whole thing was direct. God, I hated to go directly to those people and make those amends. But I knew I had to because it induced more humility and it freed me. This is the freedom step. And I had to do it. And my sponsor said it was so important because it says, make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. She said, what you got to keep in mind, Sue, is that you might be an other. If you're going to go back and stir up old stuff up, you might get hurt again. And if those people have lived this long without you, like I gave a child up for adoption when I was a teenager, I wasn't going to go look that kid and her folks up and walk up and knock, knock, knock. I'm your birth mother. I want to owe you amends, and stir up their stuff. Do I write to the guy that I got pregnant by and say, hey, by the way, tell your current wife you don't have to worry about me coming back in your life again because I found a new way of life, and he's forgotten about me years ago. So, if it's ever necessary, God's going to put him right here, right in front of me. Then I will know that I'm supposed to make those direct amends.
There's a very important word in step 9, and even you can go in Clubhouse and they got it written wrong on the damn steps. Make direct amends to such people wherever. And most people think whenever. And that was one of my fallacies. I thought whenever, so I had to run out with a bag of dimes, hit the phone, call them all up, and say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And I wonder why I didn't get any self-worth from that. What I had to do is change and say, I feel good about my change. I want you to understand you don't have to judge the other people in your life by the way I treated you, because there's a lot of good people. But I want you to understand, too, I'm trying to change. And therefore you can expect me to try to do what I'm saying I'm doing because I have a program of living that I'm going to change, and therefore I won't treat you the way I used to either. It's important when the bait again comes in 9 and 10 is there's promises here. Everything through here, there's a reason to do it. When you do it for a reason, then you get something from it. We're selfish, self-centered people. The character defect can become an asset. If I'm going to work this hard to do all this stuff, I want something from it. See? And these promises there. I was listening to a guy, my sponsor told this guy one time he's sober 30 years, he said, "You're the only guy I know that's sober 30 years that all the promises have not come true." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "That one promise, self-seeking, will never leave you, or will leave you, whatever it is." And there he said, "You still want everything your way after 30 years of sobriety." The guy ain't married, he hasn't had a relationship with anybody. He uses various things, tools of AA to live off of financially, all kinds of things. And he's sober 30 years. And, that isn't what I want, and I think one of the mistakes that people do is that they come here and work the first 9 steps, and they put them on the shelf, and they try to work 10, 11, and 12. But by the same token, if you have changed as a result of working the first 9 steps, you will never again have to work the first 9 steps like you did when you worked the first 9 steps the first time. So it's a paradox there. If I have changed as a result of the sobriety and what I've done in the first 9 steps, I will never have to work the first 9 steps under the conditions that I worked the first 9 steps the first time. So the idea, the philosophy that there's, 3 steps, 10, 11, and 12, which are maintenance steps, which I'm going to use, if I'm going to use 10, 11, and 12 to develop my relationship, which is promptly admit where I'm wrong, pray and meditate for the right thing to do in my relationship, and then work with others and go down this path, then I have to work my amends daily to do 10. I have to see my patterns of 4 and 5 in order to be able to review 10. I have to have my 4th step done every time I share with another alcoholic, because that's my greatest asset. My past, my greatest asset. That's what I share. That's what gets us identity in 12. I have to recognize that if you don't want what I got, I can't make you do it. My sponsor is telling a story about, I can tell you people in here that there's a big hole right out here in the parking lot. And half of you are going to go fall in that hole. If you can't find the hole, you're going to come back here and ask me, where is that hole? I got to fall in that hole, because I don't get it any other way. And then there's certain people I can say, look, there's a hole out there, go out this door. And they'll go out that door. Some people can learn. And I believe by the time that I've done step 9, I don't have to run out and fall in that damn hole again. By the time, if I've done step 9, in the best of my ability, and you tell me there's a hole out there, my sponsor says there's a hole out there, I'll go out this door. I have faith in him to believe that I'll go out that door, and I don't have to fall in that hole.
The thing about step 10 that's so important for me and why I have to keep doing it all the time is because it's the basics for me of where I keep examining my motives. I keep examining my character defects on a daily basis of where they came up from. And I keep looking at where I'm at today compared to where I used to be or where I came from. And it's the thing that keeps me going straight down this path. It's the one step that's in my life every day that induces humility, that keeps me going on the straight path of recovery to see where I'm swaying, what I'm going, what direction I'm going, what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling. Am I doing good? Am I not doing good?
See, one of the things, if you look at step 10, it says continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admit it. If I continue to take personal inventory, what do I want to do that for? Why would I want to take personal inventory? If I'm an obsessive, compulsive behavior person, when I took my first drink, I am an obsessive, compulsive behavior person today. I am more so. It's a progressive disease. The reason I want to continue to take inventory is so that I don't get locked into an obsession today. Because, God, if I get locked in an obsession, when I came here, it was like looking through a straw. So when I got in locked in an obsession, it was like intense. I've stayed here 19 and a half years. I got peripheral vision. When I get locked into an obsession at 19 and a half years, I don't want to control you. I want to control you. See? So my perception has changed, but my disease hasn't. I still have the disease. I get more frustrated over not being able to control multitudes today than I do over one. See? So I need this direction so that I don't try to control, because I can get locked into these deals and I get so obsessed with good ideas that kill me. And so I need the sponsor direction. I need to look at this today. And when I look at this and I'm going, the reason that you work step 10 or I work step 10 is so it keeps me open. I sponsor people that are days, months, years, sobriety. I try to keep sponsorship on an even keel in the sense of different lengths of sobriety, so that when I'm working the steps with somebody, I'm working with a newcomer and he's just trying to stay physically sober. I'm working on a guy with 31 days who wants to stay physically sober and get something to make love to. I'm working on a guy that's a year and a half sober who wants to get sober, stay sober today, make love to something, and then get something materially. And then I sponsor guys who are 6 or 7 years who want to stay sober, get something, make love to something, make something in themselves, become brain surgeons without going to school. They want to lock in on this, and when am I going to get mine? And then I sponsor people that want to stay sober today, and they want to get laid today, and they want to get a job today, and they want to get a big paycheck today, and they want to sponsor 14 people today. So they've gone from the guy that was just wanted to stay sober today to a guy that's trying to, it's like the guy that puts the plates on the dowels. You ever seen the old guy and they put them plates and spin the plate? And so they're shaking this down, they're shaking this down. People with 10 years of sobriety got about 10 dowel plates whipping around out there. And at 19 and a half years, I can see with them suckers, and he's in that room. Hey, sponsor, come in here. I need some help shaking the dowel. And you know what? 19 years, at 10 years, I'd go help a guy.
You're right.
At 19 years, I say, let them all fall. No, I can't do that. They'll break. Let them break. If you don't let them break, they'll break you. Ask me how I know.
Because this step keeps us, by the time we get this step, we have the conscious contact with a higher power, a sponsor, and other human beings that we know if we do that again, there are going to be consequences. And this is the step that lets us know on a daily basis, okay, if I'm going to do that, what are the consequences? Am I being stubbornly opinionated and it's my way again? This step keeps me current in my recovery of going on the straight, narrow path toward a higher power.
Remember, in 4, we said we were going to do a fearless inventory. Fearless. Well, that's one of the most ridiculous things to ask a newcomer to do. How can you ask a newcomer to do a moral inventory? They don't even know what morals are, especially in alky. We drank so we had no morals. And you Al-Anons took the crap from us, and you learned to not have morals because we said, you don't need them. All you need's me. See? You don't need morals. I'm your moral. I'll tell you how you feel. Let me show you. That's what I always love. Jeff Livesay went over there and got his teeth pulled last night, got 4 impacted wisdom teeth pulled, and he showed up over there, and I said, now, do you want me to show you, explain to you the difference between mental pain and physical pain? And they're like that. If I hit you upside the head, you'll have some excruciating physical pain. There's a difference between physical pain and mental pain. And so when I do this inventory, step 10, what is one of my guidelines that it taught me in 4? If I do as it said, continue to take personal inventory. If there is fear in my 10th step inventory, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. And when I looked at my relationship with Sue, and I did my 10th step, and there's fear in it, there's something wrong. There's something wrong.
Okay. Step 11 says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. This step for me, the key to this whole step for me, is praying for God's knowledge of His will for me and the power to carry it out. There is so much power in these rooms. Chuck Chamberlain used to say, if we could see the power of God in these rooms, it would be so bright it would blind you. And it's the reason we come to these places and do these things, because it plugs us into the power. And then we take it home and we apply it to our personal lives. God, help me. And it becomes so simple. It's a it's a perspective that we get. By the time we get here, we have a new perspective on things. We're trying to get insight into our lives. We're trying to show people how to do that with their lives. And we learn that we don't have to figure things out anymore. I still do that from time to time, and then I think, how stupid, why didn't I realize that? This step puts discipline in my life. And when I'm on that course of the discipline, I know that I need to make myself a channel for this higher power to work through. And that's why I love the story about the little boy praying or getting scared in his room and getting in bed with his dad. And he says, I'm afraid. And his daddy said, you didn't have to be afraid in there. He said, but I was alone. And his daddy says, no, you weren't. God was in there with you. And he said, yeah, I know, Daddy, but right now I need something with skin on it. Now, this is where I've learned all of this stuff from my God working through people. And they've helped me to the point that when I get to this step, it's me and God.
When you get through step 10 and work that step 10, and and it implies you do step 10 at night.
You can do it anytime you want to.
Anytime
you
better do
need
step 10
to.
in the morning with your meditation, or you don't start your day out right. If you start your day out right, jumping up, throwing your clothes on, hitting the freeway, running down there, you started your day out with pucky. And you're trying to control something, and you're going to run it through the rest of the day. I get up 30 minutes extra every day to do my meditation. I put that in my schedule. It's just like me clocking in. I got a boss that I got to clock in at my work. I clock in, clock out. I had to put that discipline in my life. I've had to have that relationship with God. I have to clock in. If I don't clock in, I'm running on self-will. And it tells us in the book, all our answers are in the book about this. It isn't just our opinion. Our answers are in the book. The amazing thing with step 11, some of our answers to step 11 is in chapter 11, A Vision for You. By the time you do step 11, there's supposed to be an open channel. There's supposed to be an open channel. And to eliminate the choke of the channel, the choke is anger, fear, frustration, and misunderstanding. The amazing thing, if you go to Vision for You on page 151, a lot of times you don't read that. We read the end of that. It says, sniveling Denises of the mad realm, the chilling vapor that the loneliness settled down. That's what every time I meditate, I ask myself about. Do I have that? How do I know if I have that in an amazing? Momentarily we did, then would come oblivion, the awful awakening, the faces, the hideous four horsemen, terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. That's what I ask myself about every time I meditate. I look at this. Do I have these things in my relationship? If I have terror in my relationship, something's going to happen here. Bewilderment because I can't control her. Frustration because she won't listen to me. Despair.
It's the consciousness of your contact with your higher power that's the key to this whole thing. You can slam dunk your meditation in the morning. And if you slam dunk your meditation, you're going to have a slam dunk meditation. But if you make that conscious effort and you think, I was working with a newcomer here a while back, and I said, did you read your books this morning? Because she's going, pow, 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 this is wrong, they're doing this, and they're doing that. And I go, wait a minute. Did you read your morning meditation? Did you read your One Day at a Time? Did you read your Courage to Change? And she said, yeah, I did. And I said, what does it say? She goes, I don't know. How long ago did you read it? 5 minutes ago. And I understand that mind, because mine's like that a lot, and it was definitely that way when I was new. And I said, let me get my books. And we did them together, and as we went through this sentence, we said, what does that word mean? What does that sentence mean? And that's the way I do my morning meditation. I sit there and, okay, God, what does this mean for me? And then the answers will come, and it says that in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I have my focus into the words that's talking about what me and God need to do for the day.
If you do your morning meditation and you do basically what it suggests in the big book, if you go to page 164, and I use this sometimes, but it's my barometer, abandon yourself to God. You got to get up to do that. You got to get in the right position to do that. You can make all kinds of excuses, but come on. It's a simple thing, So you abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. So you say in the morning, your faults. You know them. You wake up and your mouth tastes like you've been sucking on a bullet all night long. You know it ain't right. You got that metallic taste. You got that burnt acid. If you got that, wake up and you just got that clenched fist. No, it's not. So it says, when you abandon yourself to God, step 1, 2, and 3. Admit your faults to Him and your fellows, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Clear away the wreckage of your past, 8 and 9. Give freely of what you find with us, 10, 11, and 12. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. Fellowship, there's your fellowship. After you have done this, you have the fellowship. This is the book. This is the first AA. This is the tool. And then the fellowship. It says right here, we shall be with you in the fellowship. After you work the 12 steps. It doesn't say jump up and get out in the fellowship and rip and tear. It says work 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and we shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. You got to be in the Spirit or you're not in the fellowship. This is a fellowship. Sue and I are a fellowship. Where 2 or more are gathered, God's within, if we're in the Spirit. And you will surely meet some of us. You trudge the road of happy destiny. Trudging does not mean unhappiness. I'm trudging. Well, tell your face that you're happy while you're trudging. See? And I can't trudge the road of happy destiny with my relationship with Sue if my trudging makes her trudge. I may be trudging, but she does not have to trudge with me for me to trudge. We came here trudging together. And if I trudge, she trudged. If she trudged, I trudged. So we both trudged. And that is not a road of happy destiny. See?
In the Al-Anon 12 and 12, it talks on meditation. You can hear in your meetings people go, well, meditation's this, meditation's that, and you hear it all over the program. What is meditation? And it simply says, it means concentrated thought on a chosen subject. It doesn't mean that you have to sit there and, I used to think, empty my mind, empty my mind. My mind was never empty. No. And so in reading my meditation books, I concentrate on the positive things in my life. Now, in my meditation, I've even thought about, what can I do for Keith today? What can I do for Simone today? What can I do for others? Because I'm sitting there and I'm in a positive frame of mind.
One of the things that we've realized, because we're going to do the traditions when we're through here after we eat, these steps are for the individual. If I work on me and we, and me and we, and sponsor and direction and we, I'm not working on this relationship. I'm working on my relationship with my God. Understand? The steps are for the individual. When you do the traditions, you're still going to hear Keith and Sue. We've been together 35 years. We work the steps, and the traditions will tell you how we worked as a group. Then we put them together and worked as a group, as a team.
Our
We have to put them all together, the book, the steps, and the tradition, to have a good relationship.
Our relationship is no different than the fellowship for me. It is a byproduct as a result of working these steps.
And the true bondage of that is in the 12 step. When I got to the 12 step and I wanted to know what's evidence of me working these steps, I got 4 alcoholics over here and they all think that everything I say is true. And she don't.
Nope.
My spiritual awakening of the 12th step is very simply, one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic is the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous. My spiritual awakening is that one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic is not necessarily the answer to my communication with Sue. First of all, she's a woman, so she has a bullshit filter. Second of all, she is an Al-Anon. Now that's our story. So I can be over here talking to Jim. We can talk about all this. Like we were talking out there. Well, I can tell you when you're going to drink, and I can tell you what you're going to say before you drink. Let me tell you something. I will never, ever be able to hear that from Sue like I heard it from Jim. When Jim said that out there before we started this meeting, I knew exactly what he's talking to. I believed him. I just said it and did it to a guy I sponsored with 10 years just a few days ago. I just told a guy I sponsored today, you want to do that? Go do it. And Sue said, oh, that's bullshit. So my spiritual awakening is that I understand I'm an alcoholic and I help an alcoholic. Do not confuse that with her. Even if she was an alcoholic, her ain't going to hear that.
In the 12th step, for me, the first part of the spiritual awakening was that I remember looking in the mirror one day and I wasn't who I used to be. I no longer had that self-obsessedness. I was not self-centered. I cared about others. And the second part of it is carrying the message. And I remember when I realized that, it's like, oh my God gave me a purpose. I am a trusted servant to my higher power. My God gave me this disease so I could ultimately find my God. Therefore, the disease of alcoholism was ultimately a gift in my life because my God knew I wouldn't find Him without it. And He gave me this gift, and therefore I get to carry the message. I have a purpose. I am of service to my God now. And it was so overwhelming to me when I found out that is my primary purpose, that is my ultimate purpose, that is what drives me in my life. And the third part is practice these principles in all of our affairs. That's the third part. Taking this program everywhere else. I have to conduct myself in the manner that I've been taught to do in this program and work on my character defects and be of service to my God no matter where I'm at. And I can take this stuff with me, but I think the responsibility that we have in today's day and time in this program of Al-Anon, or AA if you choose, is that taking this program everywhere might be taking it to your meeting. What a concept. This program's going to hell in a handbasket. If you got the time, you got the knowledge, you got the responsibility. And that's where we're letting the old-timers down that gave this thing to us. Is we are not taking this program into our meeting places. And I feel so strong about that now. That's where I'm at in my program right now, is that I don't want this thing to go to hell in a handbasket. And by God, not my home meeting. I had a gal in my meeting a couple of weeks ago that she was going to go ask a newcomer to be her sponsor. 9 years, and she's going to go ask a newcomer to be her sponsor. And I said, look, I love you, I support you, but you ain't going to screw up a newcomer in my home group. And if you want to do that, you can do that. I'm not going to tell you you can't do that, but you're not going to do it in my home group. Because that's not what our literature tells us, and that's not what the old-timers told us. And I called my sponsor and told her exactly what I said, expecting me to get my ass chewed out for telling somebody to leave my group. And my sponsor said, good for you. Don't water this thing down, Sue. And I felt so good.
There's a prayer before step 12. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated and doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves, as we no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. And the next chapter is devoted entirely to the 12th step. And so it's an amazing thing. Working with others, before you get to the end of this thing, you have to the wives. Isn't that a funny thing? to the wives. That must have something to do with relationships. You know, I mean, they wrote to the wives because that's what they were. And you realize when they wrote the chapter to the wives, there was no auxiliary. There was no women in AA. So they wrote the chapter to the wives for the auxiliary, really, which was Al-Anons and AA women. So we're talking about relationships, whether it's man, man, woman, woman, man, woman, animal, man, whatever in the hell you're talking about. To the wives is a chapter for all that.
The last sentence in the 12 and 12 in Al-Anon says, carrying the message is an obligation I have. Let me remind myself what I do speaks louder than what I say.
There's a chapter to the family afterwards, and one more time this word comes out. I can't stress it enough when it comes to relationships with you, your God, you with your fellow man, you with your mate. The family afterwards, on page 123, the old buildings will eventually be replaced by finer ones, and new structures will take many years. But the wise family will admire him for what he is trying to be. What we are trying to be. What are we trying to be? We're trying to be ourselves. We're trying to be free of those obsessions. We're trying to be an individual. We're trying to be able to have the strength to make a decision. We're trying to ask for help. We're trying to carry that message. That's the message I'm trying to take. I don't come here and try to carry the message that I'm obsessed with some obsession and follow me so you can see what not to do. I come here and say I am no longer powerless over these obsessions because I no longer have them. And these other chapters that we come through here are where we learn to take these things and put them to the employer. Isn't it amazing? After it comes down, it talks about the 12 step. It talks chapter of the wife, chapter of the family, chapter of the employer. And then what? A vision for you. That's a spiritual awakening. For me to come here and work these steps, then I have a wife. I have a relationship. I have an employer. I have a relationship. I've had to go through all the same surrenders with that employee situation that I have with her, with them, with you. And then what do I carry? One of the worst times of my life is going down the road with a carload of newcomers and I don't have a job and I'm telling 6 guys in my car, you got to get a job. Oh, damn, that doesn't taste good, you know. And so what I recognize is that I have to do these things so that I can share.
And by the time we get here, we should know the difference between doing God's work and God's will.
I also understand by working these 12 steps, my spiritual awakening is that if I'm going to share this with you, you got to want it. If you don't want what I got, then I can't help you. My sponsor says, I talk, you listen. When you quit listening, I quit talking. And that's as simple as that. I can help some people. Chuck Chamberlain told me many years ago, there's some people you can help and some people I can help, and they may not be the same. As long as you're going for help, we'll be okay. And the most important spiritual thing about the individual 12 steps applying to my life and her applying in her life is that there has never been any conflict about what I have to do to stay sober. And there has never been any conflict in me about what she has to do to stay sane. And so therefore we've never had any conflict. They told us in the very beginning the spiritual awakening is looking down, standing in the middle of a railroad track. You know, even though you know it's impossible for that to be a railroad track and be one rail, it will always have to be 2 rails. If you're doing these steps in your life and you're doing what God wants you to do so that you can be what God wants you to be, you stand in the middle of the railroad track and you look down the railroad track, at some point down there the illusion is it becomes one. And after 35 years, we have become one, but we are always 2. And the thing that keeps us aware of the fact that we are not one attached to the hip, that we are not dependent upon each other for our happiness, is the traditions. And we'll share on them later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. What an exciting workshop. Boy, there was an awful lot to digest, wasn't there? Anyhow, this session is over, and now we'll have the work for this potluck. You got it.
Oh, well, I didn't want it. Keith and Sue, we would like to present these to you for coming up, and thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
We love you very, very much.
We love you. You're a sweetheart.
Thank you. Great spaghetti.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
No. Never tasted it.
Keep coming back. It works. Aren't they pretty? Made with love.
Okay, now we're going to start our second half, and we're not going to go into the reading of anything else except for the 12. Oh, you want to do the raffle? And now we can continue. I lost my book. Celeste, I want to come up and read the traditions, please. Sure. You're right in front, and I called you before. Okay. Unity through the traditions.
Okay. I'm Celeste. The 12 traditions. The traditions that follow bind us together in unity. They guide the groups in their relations with other groups, with AA, and the outside world. They recommend group attitudes toward leadership, membership, money, property, public relations, and anonymity. The traditions evolved from the experience of AA groups in trying to solve their problems of living and working together. Al-Anon adopted these group guidelines and over the years has found them sound and wise. Although they are only suggestions, Al-Anon's unity and perhaps even its survival are dependent on adherence to these principles. 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal progress for the greatest number depends upon unity. 2. For our group purpose there is but one authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3. The relatives of alcoholics, when gathered together for mutual aid, may call themselves an Al-Anon family group, provided that, as a group, they have no other affiliation. The only requirement for membership is that there be a problem of alcoholism and a relative or friend. 4. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting another group or Al-Anon or AA as a whole. 5. Each Al-Anon family group has but one purpose, to help families of alcoholics. We do this by practicing the 12 steps of AA ourselves, by encouraging and understanding our alcoholic relatives, and by welcoming and giving comfort to families of alcoholics. 6. Our Al-Anon family groups ought never endorse, finance, or lend our name to any outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary spiritual aim. Although a separate entity, we should always cooperate with Alcoholics Anonymous. 7. Every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8. Al-Anon 12-step work should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9. Our groups as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10. The Al-Anon family groups have no opinion on outside issues, hence our name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, TV, and films. We need guard with special care the anonymity of all AA members. 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles above personalities.
Thank you. And now, so that we can continue without any further interruptions from me, let's put Sue and Keith back on for session 2 on the traditions.
Hello, everybody. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Keith.
I'm Sue. I'm a grateful member of the Al-Anon family group.
What we'd like to share on is the 12 traditions and how we have used them in our life and in our relationship of marriage of 33 years and together 35 years, and in our family and the whole thing. As I mentioned, the 12 steps are for the individual, and the 12 traditions are for the group, and our family is a group. We're a group here today. And group conscience is a very important thing that brings God into it. And one of the things that I really like about the traditions and the steps and the difference between the two. I mean, our group is a very important thing. Our home group, my home group's a Dog on a Roof group. The meeting's over 37 years old. It has a legacy. It's a men's stag meeting. I needed a men's stag meeting because I didn't need to be distracted by the woman or women, because when I got here I was really sick and I needed to hear from men. I've never been intimidated by men. I mean, I hear women say when they come to AA that they didn't like women and they had to develop a relationship with women. I've always liked being with the guys. I'm a guy type of guy. I wasn't, I didn't hang around with women when I drank, really. I mean, when I got to AA, I couldn't have got a hooker with $1,000 bill in each hand, so I wasn't doing anything. But that's just my story. My home group is still at Men's Stag, always has been, and it really helps me. The reason I like the Men's Stag is because I can have problems with my relationship, and then I go to my Men's Stag, and we talk about men's ideas of things. And then I come back out of there, and then what that teaches me is that I understand that men think a certain way and women think a certain other way. There's a lot of similarities, but there's certain things that I need to hear the man side of it, and then I can listen to the woman side of it. And women, have a different, we're made up differently, we think differently, what have you, even though times have changed and different values have changed. There's a separation there. And I also learned by going to men's meetings, and my home group being a men's meeting, is matter of fact, Elsa Chamberlain explained this to me, and I don't think she was a student of psychology. I think she was a very wise lady. She was in her 80s and been in the program 30-some years. And she said that every person has a makeup, and in that makeup as a person as a whole, 100%, why some of us, like some men, are more feminine than they are masculine. So in each person, like you might be, like I'm 85% man and 15% broken up into feminine and gentle and that kind of thing, but I'm a macho type of guy, and a Virgo and all that kind of stuff. And Sue's a Virgo, and she's about 85% man and about 15% woman. And that's why when we had arguments, we didn't have verbal arguments. We had physical violence. We fought like two men. And by going to men's meetings, I recognize that some men are 85% woman and 15% man. And some women are 85% man, and they play different games. There's different games here. And so to have the unity to get along, you have to understand after you work the steps with the individual, why then you have to, how are you dealing with your group? What are you dealing with? And I had to understand some of those things, and the traditions put it into proper. Even at that young, she was not stupid. And once we start trying to live by the prescription of this book, then there was always a God consciousness. And it doesn't make any difference. In our family, there was 3, which kind of makes it better because you have the difference in a 2. 3, you can at least plot that curve. 2, why, it could be a straight line. But I still believe, because the book says where 2 or more are gathered, why God's in the presence. You have some unity. You have something. And so you do that. The thing that is right at the end of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in spiritual experience, the traditions are, it's talking about God consciousness, it's talking about unity, it's talking about the group. It says, most emphatically we wish to say that the alcoholic capable of honesty facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. And the one good thing about the group conscience or unity is there's not, everybody sitting in this room has a closed mind. There's at least 1 or 2 open minds in here. And that's the channel which we allow God to go. And it says he can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness is essential to recovery. So that's basically what we put these traditions in our life. There's one other thing that's vitally important in the traditions, is in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous Tradition. We alcoholics see that we must work together and hang together. And it talks about the fact that, something about conformity and money. Money and conformity. Money and conformity. And so what I had to recognize is we had a big problem with money. That was one of our biggest hang-up as a family. Anybody that lives with an alcoholic or a gambler or doper or any of that kind of stuff has a problem with money. And so that was part of our, that's tradition 3, money and conformity. So what I had to recognize, I had a problem with money and I had a problem with trying to make them conform to my ideas. So the 12 traditions is what we brought into the home, and where we put the tradition, where it said group, we put family. And we've used that, we use it today as our guideline for everything that we do.
It's like there were so many rules before we got to this program, but nobody knew what they were. You know, so we were all playing a different game. You know, and it's like the rules changed any given moment. The rules changed, whether they were with Keith. And the traditions are not rules. They're only guidelines to bring unity into a group. And I was told in the very beginning, you can use these traditions, and everywhere it says group, break it up, and it says grow up. G-R-O-U-P. And that's the way you apply it to your family. And what the traditions have done for us is they form obedience to the unenforceable in our home. We always go with the traditions when there's a conflict of interest. And the first tradition says our common welfare should come first. Personal progress for the greatest number depends upon unity. When I first got here, I didn't have a clue of what unity was supposed to be in a home because I was always leaving or not leaving. And we knew we had to get better. And it was like the first key sobriety date is May the 11th of 76. And Simone had her birthday on May the 25th. And there was something in us that said this was the answer. And we took Simone's birthday cake. He was in the detox, and we took that birthday cake up to the detox. And we had her birthday in that detox unit because that's where the answer was. We didn't plan any big neighborhood party with the kids or anything. Daddy's sober. We want Daddy to be a part of this. And so it was our common welfare. I have to go to meetings and I have to do this for me. But then I have to bring it home because we're all doing this thing and it pulls the unity in together.
This is what we recognize, sponsorship. We got to recognize we work the steps before we work the tradition. I don't think that you can work the traditions until you've lived some amount of time in this program, been involved in service, and done something. So we had to work the steps as an individual. And the first tradition, our common welfare comes first, means our family. And therefore, we had to have sponsored direction. She had to have sponsored direction. I had to have sponsored direction that was for common welfare for our family. And like I mentioned before, we had to change sponsors because we had a sponsor that hated me, and I had a sponsor that was, had no family. And we had a family. When I sobered up, I had a wife and a kid. And they told me that, hey, you got a wife and a kid. You've ruined their lives, so you're responsible for this. You need to take care of that business. They're there, so practice on them. They're handy. Don't make a decision to, you're going to leave or, how did I get here? I mean, I met her, I was drunk. I married her, I was drunk. I lived with her for 13 years, drunk most of the time. Had a kid. The night the kid was born, I was drunk. And I sober up, and here I am. And I've got this mess. That's what I brought in here. That's my story. I didn't sober up and say, who are you? I don't know you. I want a divorce. I sobered up and they said, you got a family. You've screwed it up. You need to spend the rest of your life fixing that up, taking care of it. So that's my story. I came here with a family. Now, fortunately, the anger in my life and the violence, the physical violence went away, but it was still in my voice. And I said, I got to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous every day for the rest of my life. What are you going to do? And she said, well, I'm going to Al-Anon, and the kid's going to Al-Anon. And so we started down this path together. And our common welfare should come first, and that is our program. And so we put our program first, our sponsor first. I mean, You could be going crazy, take out the trash, mow the yard, do all this and that and the other. I said, I got to go to a meeting. Go to a meeting.
And I didn't like the yard being like that. I used to ride to meetings with my sponsor and Al-Anon friends, and they'd take me home, and the grass was like waist high out there. But it was more important for him to be in an AA meeting. So I'd say, okay, I'm going to get out real quick, and I'm going to run in the house, and don't linger out here because there's Bengal tigers out there in that grass. You know, and I had to say those things for myself to help me release it, because the program was more important than a mowed lawn. And it was more important in my personal progress. I didn't know how to talk when I came here without telling him what to do and cussing him out for what he hadn't done. And in the first tradition, it talks about this is the reason for sponsorship. My personal progress comes first. So when I go to my sponsor and I whine and I complain and all those things that we do about the alcoholic, he's sober but he's not doing this, then she got me right back into being grateful for sobriety, and so the unity came.
See, one of the things in the first step, it says I'm powerless. So right away, the first half of the first step, I'm powerless. And it's amazing, and each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is but a small part of the great whole. So your first tradition goes along, I'm powerless. I'm just a little old alcoholic. I'm a spoke in the wheel. No matter what I think, I'm just an alcoholic. That's one thing I loved about the International Convention. That International Convention, and sit down there that first Friday night, and there were 50, 60,000 people sitting in there. God only knows there were thousands of home groups sitting in there. There was thousands upon thousands of sponsors. There was thousands upon thousands of babies. There were people there that weren't even alcoholic. The whole damn thing, and here's a whole stadium full of people, and there's not one sponsor that controls that whole thing. There's not one group that controls that whole thing, you know. There has to be a God, and that's what I loved about the unity, that it brought me back into perspective is there's a power greater than me. My home group isn't the best home group. Who in the hell are we competing with? My sponsor ain't the best sponsor. Who in the hell are we competing with? You know? And what I got to keep in mind is that the unity of the thing is the direction with the people with which I'm going. So my family unity has got to go in the direction of sobriety, because I knew this. I couldn't come home to an old idea. I could not stay sober in a place where I drank, in the conditions that I drank under, because we had all these patterns. I'd come home, start the fight, bam, I go get drunk. So our unity of this tradition said that the house, the family environment had to change for me to stay sober. Now, the point was, I wasn't saying that's Keith's rule. That was the unity. What are you hearing in your Al-Anon meetings? Aren't they telling you in your Al-Anon meetings that you can't have the same conditions? See? You have to change the condition. And so that's what this first step. Welfare of our fellows. And we sit down and start having family meetings to get the communication. Like I say, we had everything out of perspective, and we started the communication. And we started our meetings so that we could have, each person could share with no rebuttal. No crosstalk, no rebuttal. And that right away put unity in there.
And then that brought the second tradition in, and it says, for our group purpose there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. We started by having, and they just happened, we didn't plan them, we started by having meetings on Saturday morning at the breakfast table, and there was no ultimate authority at that breakfast table. Keith had been dethroned. He wasn't our God anymore. You know, there's a loving God, and it ain't the alcoholic anymore. So he was dethroned.
I was glad to give up the job. Like I said, my actions and reactions to my drinking, once I sobered up, the rubber band starts unwinding. So where I wanted to control, I killed animals in front of Sue and Simone so that I could put the umbrella of fear over them that you could be next. You see how quickly I killed that dog? I'll kill you the same way. And that removes all their choices. Fear. And then I sober up. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. I wuss out. See? The rubber band goes the other way. The whole personality change. Now I got all this guilt. I'm sober and I can't drink anymore, and I totally went the other way. I'm at the mercy of the family. See? Beat me some more. I'm full of guilt.
So now with the God in our life, there is a group conscience. You know, I remember Simone was in high school. She didn't want to have a curfew. And Keith was traveling a lot with his job, and she was staying out late. And then when he'd come home, I'd tell him, she's not doing this, not doing that. And she'd say, no, I'm not doing anything wrong. And I'd say, I know what they do out there at 2 o'clock in the morning, And so we had a group conscience. And Keith and Simone voted that she didn't need a curfew. And I couldn't handle it. And I got up one morning and I just went in, and 'cause I'd been, the night before I heard a wreck down at the corner, and I got up and I was right at that window, just like I used to be with Keith. And it dawned on me, I ain't gonna do this thing twice. I'm not gonna go through that in kind of sanity anymore. And the next morning I got up and I started packing. I didn't say one word to anybody. I wasn't mad. I wasn't angry. I wasn't playing games. I was just out of there. They'd had a group conscience, and I was odd man out, so I'm out of here. I can't live with it. Because my gut was churning all that stuff. And Keith came in and he said, what are you doing? And I said, I can't live with that. You and Simone, it's group conscience. You got your way, and I'm leaving. And he goes, no, wait a minute. And he got Simone in there, and he said, your mom and I have been together for a long time, and she can't handle this. We got to work this thing out. Simone said, no problem. She'd been going to Al-Anon for a few years, and she said, when I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to tell you when I'll be home, and then you won't have to worry about it anymore. And I said, so what if I'm not home? What's going to happen? And she said, I'll leave you a note. And so she started doing that. Now, she learned how to do those things in Al-Anon, and it brought some more trust into her and my relationship.
See, once we communicated it brought the unity. Communication breeds your unity. And
it's like nobody was setting the rules. We communicated.
The best thing about that was we could change. I could vote with her because I thought, you're old enough, you want to get out there and get it on, whatever, get it on. And then when I saw how it affected her, I said, wait a minute. Sue and I were together before you came along. When you leave here, it'll still be me and her. So the unity is between Sue and I, not between me and the kid. I don't know why I voted that way. Maybe I had guilt. Who knows? But I could change my mind. And that still kept it. Matter of fact, there was more unity there. And what Simone says, I'll just let you know when I'm going to be out, or I'll let you know where I'm going to go, so you don't have to worry. See? So that was the thing. For our group purpose, there has been one ultimate authority, and that brought it in. The authority, by me getting out of the driver's seat, the alcoholic, the domineering, violent person, what that did is that then I could vote, and they could vote, and we could change our mind.
And it allowed Simone to become a human being and stick up for her own principles and some things, and we listened. And it gave her some self-worth. She got to bring the principles from her Al-Anon program into our home. It made her an equal.
Okay, our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. That's a very important thing. That is really the deal, the bottom line. Our membership doesn't have to include everybody. And a lot of people misconstrue that. If you say they say, if you got the desire to stop drinking, why you can be a member of AA or whatever. No. That is not what that tradition says. Our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. Now, if you suffer from a lot of other damn things, that's fine. There's a lot of other places to go. But if you suffer from alcoholism, isn't it an amazing thing that includes the families of? The end of the chapter of the wives tells you about Al-Anon. That's why I said when we worked that 12 step, the next 4 chapters there is, working with others, to the wives, to the family, to the employer, a vision for you. And so when we come down here, there's those who suffer from alcoholism. That's a very important tradition. I'll tell you what, Sue and I run around trying to sponsor people after we worked the steps, and part of our unity was that, we were going to work with all these people, Well, we had 40 treatment centers within 15 minutes of our house that were over 40 bed treatment centers. We had every jackass in the country with every kind of an emotional problem, neurotic, goofball, weirdo, ever hang up emotionally, was flogging into these treatment centers. And then they push them out saying, I'm an alcoholic, or I'm an Al-Anon, or I'm a CODA, or a MODA, or WODA, you know. And we start bringing people into our house of all sicknesses and illnesses. And Jesus, we've seen some people die because we were trying to help them with the principles of the big book Alcoholics Anonymous, and it didn't work because they didn't have alcoholism. They had himism or herism or itism. Damn if I know what they had, but they couldn't take the first step. And so we're over there trying to help it, and it frustrated our family. It frustrated our family. See? And we had to come to this thing here and get to this third tradition. And the important thing about the third tradition, this is one of the things that I love the most. It like to drove me crazy. Nor ought AA membership ever depend upon money and conformity. Look, let me tell you something. Sue and I have loved each other broke. We've loved each other rich. She's loved me when I had a lot of money and blew it all. She loved me when I come home with a lot of money and didn't spend any on her. She's done all kinds of things with that money. She loves me whether I'm broke or whether I got money. We've learned that money always makes your depression shorter. But and I had to understand that I can't conform to everything that she wants. It's like I got up early this morning, I got around, I put on baggy pants, I did, put on my tennies, and I took a shower and put clean underwear on and everything, I'm clean. And so I knew what she's going to do. She's going to primp and put on something nice dress and everything else. And, we were coming up here for a workshop, and so when I got home at 11 o'clock, she said, well, you going to get dressed? I said, no, I'm ready to go. She said, well, you're going like that? And I said, yeah, I'm going like this. She said, well, you ought to at least put on a coat. And I said, I don't put on a coat. I'm not going to put on a tie. It's a workshop. I want to be comfortable. And so she immediately started, well, Norm says the only package, the only example of the big book is what you see up there. I said, well, put in a Norm tape. So we put in a Norm tape, and listen to Norm. And when it come part about the coat and tie, I said, take that tape out. I don't want to hear that. She's still trying to get me to conform to her. You want to dress up and look nice, fine. I'm comfortable. I'm going to do a workshop. I don't want pants that are squeezing my crotch. I don't want a tie that's choking me. I don't want to stand up here with a coat on sweating so I stink. I'm going to eat, so I want a pair of pants that stretch. I don't have to conform to the fact that she wants to look like she's going to church because I learned something very important. Just because you have your Sunday best on doesn't mean that you're, practicing the spiritual. See? And I'm extremely grateful because I went to places where they tried to make me conform and I hated them.
Okay. In this third tradition, it talks about relatives of alcoholics when gathered together for mutual aid may call themselves an Al-Anon family group, provided that as a group they have no other affiliation. The only requirement for membership, there be a problem of alcoholism and a relative or friend. And that's what we had to realize that was wrong with us in our home. Is that we were relatives of an alcoholic, and in order to come together, we had to have a common purpose, a common knowledge, a common solution for anything. And this program, this step, our tradition it explains it two ways. One is to avoid being diverted from our program by others. And two is to welcome into Al-Anon anyone who is suffering from the effects of another's alcoholism. And I sit in a room the other night and listened to a girl say, I said, who's your sponsor? And she says, it's my therapist. And my mind immediately shut. Because I knew from that point on I wasn't going to hear anything but psychology. And I don't know anything about that because this program's worked for me. So for my own common welfare, this tradition applies in my life. I'm willing to give this thing away to anybody that wants it. My motives are that if I help you, I get better. And that my only requirement to be here is that I have a relative of an alcoholic in my life. And he's in my life, and I definitely need this thing on a daily basis. And this thing fixes me into the program. This is where I belong. I have no fight with that. He's in AA. I have no fight with that. I have never asked him to go someplace else instead of AA. I have never asked him to stay home and not go to AA. I do not have a problem with him being an Alcoholics Anonymous.
when I sobered up, I recognized I had to talk to another alcoholic to stay sober. And there's certain patterns that I had that I found out through my steps. There's certain times of the day that I get thirsty. There's certain times of the week I get thirsty. There's certain times of the month I get thirsty. There's certain times of the year I get thirsty. And call it the call of the wild, whatever, but I recognize it, and I got thirsty in these times, and so I got alcoholics in my life. And I started bringing them into the house. And I got all these alkies around there different kinds. Now, they're sober. I didn't bring any drunks into my house. And I remember we were all lounging around in there one time, and Sue went and called up an old-timer and said, they're over here at the house. They got the ashtrays full of cigarette butts. They're in here. Their shoes are scattered everywhere. They're all in there talking AA and everything. And it was Elsa Chamberlain. Elsa shared a story with Sue about the fact of how important it meant, and, for alkies to talk together, and they'll learn how to respect your place. And as you get, the house we were talking about, there wasn't a picture frame that didn't cover a hole in the wall. There wasn't a damn broken window. There were door jambs were kicked out there, and she's bitching because these guys are sitting in there belching and farting with their shoes off, smoking a bunch of cigarettes,
It looked like a flop house.
Well, it was a flop house. And the reason it was good for us, and I lived there for 3.5 years under my sobriety, because I could get a bunch of drunks sitting and look in that house, and we didn't have to talk drunk along. You just look around; it was right in front of you. And so what she did, the tradition there that's so important is there where 2 or 3 alcoholics are gathered together. Where 2 or 3 alcoholics were gathered together, something was happening that she couldn't do. And that's what it tells us in the family after. There's a lot of jealousy there that here all these alcoholics are helping me stay sober, and those who love me couldn't. So the traditions helped us understand and work through that jealousy and those various things that we were going through. And
Keith was telling me, these guys need me. These guys need my help in order to stay sober. And I was telling Elsa that, and I said, he's saying they need him. And she said, wait a minute. The first 100 people that Bill Wilson 12-step didn't stay sober, but Bill did. And Keith needs these guys more than they need him. Now, if you want your way of life to be like Chuck and my's way of life, then you better start working with newcomers and bringing these newcomer Al-Anons in your home. So your home will be a home and not a house anymore. She said that's the difference between a home and a house. Home has love in it. And you guys need these people to bring the love in there to help you have a home.
And this is the part that the tradition for, with respect to its own affairs, each AA group should be responsible to no other authority than its own conscience. Isn't that an amazing thing?
It's talking about each group should be autonomous.
A conscience. By the time you work the steps, you have a conscience. You can't work the fourth tradition without a conscience. You know what a conscience is? It is awareness of the consequences of your action.
But this tradition, it says each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting another group or Al-Anon or AA as a whole. This is what gives, in a family unit, this is what gives individuals freedom. And this is what gave me the acceptance for Keith. Keith is an alcoholic. He is autonomous. From me, I'm an Al-Anon. He's a different individual. Simone's a different individual. We're each autonomous in our own makeup of our personalities. However, if my personality and my makeup of my person is affecting his sobriety, then something's wrong.
I had a home group that was this men's stag, and we moved out of a building. We were kicked out of a building because we didn't have money to pay the rent. We was in a building, a room that was about as big as this. So you had about 6 chairs on one side and 6 chairs on the other, and an aisle down the middle. And we were kicked out of that room, and we went and got a room for free that was about big enough to have 6 chairs with no deal. You had to have a little room along the sides for aisle, but it was a long room, real long and narrow. And so I was a setup guy for this thing. And so Sue told me one day, so let me go down and help you with that. So she goes down, and, we're pretty new. And so we decide what we need to do, since you could only have 6 across, to get an aisle in there. you turn them so the alkies were all facing the front and had the podium up there like this room. You're all facing this way. Well, her idea was that you turn these people so they're looking at each other. In this long, narrow room, you turned this thing so you could have an aisle down the middle, but you turned these people so they could see each other. And the podium was still down at the end, but all these alkies are looking at each other like this. Geez, they come in and the meeting started, and these guys all started looking at each other, mad-dogging each other across there. They never heard what the guy down at the podium was saying. They had a fight, had a big fight in there, blew it all up. And I ran out. I didn't tell who in the hell set this room up like this. You know, I wouldn't dare tell them till a long time later that I did it. Really, with an Al-Anon. Al-Anon didn't know what the hell alkies could handle and couldn't handle. All of them guys in there, all mad dogging each other. And so I learned I ain't going to ask her to help set up my AA meeting anymore. You know. And what I recognize is there's certain things here that are conscious to the group. What that taught me is that just because you think that's a good idea doesn't mean that it's going to respond to my personality. And the opposite side of the coin is if that is the way I respond to something like that, she must have some things that she responds to that are the same way. See?
I remember one time we gone out to eat and Keith ordered pea soup. And I'd never seen him eat pea soup before. And I said, yuck. He goes, I like pea soup. I said, it tastes terrible. He said, Sue, what you have to realize is that pea soup tastes different to me than what pea soup tastes to you. And it's true. And it's the same way in life. I don't think like an alcoholic thinks. I don't understand what an alcoholic understands. He's the same with me. He doesn't understand a woman. He doesn't understand an Al-Anon. Now, I quit drinking in new sobriety because I just quit. And he didn't understand how I could just quit. It wasn't a problem. Somebody punched Mike. We can't tell if you're snoring or farting. Okay. Tradition 5.
One of the important things about Tradition 5, and this comes again to the unity of this thing, and the unity has to go with what you're doing in your program, the things that you're going along with that brings together in any relationship. Each Alcoholics Anonymous group ought to be to be a spiritual entity having but one primary purpose, that of carrying the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. What we had to understand is my impression of the alcoholic who still suffers and her impression of the alcoholic who still suffers are two different things. If you got two alcoholics living together, your one's impression of the alcoholic who, selfish and self-centered, you may be the one that's suffering, and if she's the one that's suffering, you ain't going to help each other. See?
It's so obvious in our home. Keith works with alcoholics, and I work with Al-Anon. An alcoholic come home or over to our house, and he's chewing on him like crazy, and I feel sorry for him. And then some gal will come over, and she'll be hurting and stuff, and I'll just be hollering and pounding on her, and Keith goes, God, don't do her that way. She needs some love right now, And it's so obvious in that setting. Okay, Tradition 5.
The thing that you got to understand about Tradition 5 is goes back to the simple thing is that one of the things that we had to have in our relationship is we had to have a common purpose. A common purpose is not to make me happy, for me to make you happy, not for you to get what you want and battle with me. The common purpose is to carry the message to another person. That's what we said about the step. The steps is so that we put a power in our life that allows us to be what God wants us to be.
Acceptance, love, and unity.
Okay, problems with money, property, and authority may easily divert us from our primary spiritual aim. And boy, in a relationship, that does it. I mean, there is nothing causes more diversion from our spiritual aim than money, property, and authority. And when I sobered up, I had a house I paid $22,000 for. I owed $80 on it. I paid $22, put $12 down, so I only owed $10. I lived in it 12 years, and when I sobered up, I sold it after 3 years of sobriety, and I owed $80. And I said, it's my house. And she said, by God, you can have it. There ain't nobody in their right mind would want a house that they paid $22,000 for and didn't do nothing to it but tear it up, and now you owe 80, you know. And, you know, the property, you want this property, you can have it. I had a pickup, went down the road crooked, owed $250,000 to people. I owed $250,000 when I sobered up. I had nothing. I had nothing to show for it. Had a house that I bought for $22,000, owed $80,000 on. I owed $250,000, and I had nothing for that. And we want to have a fight about money? And we want to have a fight about authority? I'll let you have the authority to take care of that crap, I'll tell you for sure. You want it? Take it. You figure out a way to do it. I had 5 checking accounts. I had paper flying all over town. I had people wanting to kill me. I had nobody to borrow it from.
Keith had a job offer with his company to go to Bakersfield and to be over a whole division up there. And he kept telling me, I didn't want to go. And he kept telling me, look, babe, we can get 10 times the biggest house. You know, I'll be somebody, I'll be the guy over the whole area, and you'll be the first lady of Chevron. And I'm saying, I don't want to leave my program. I don't want to leave Orange County. At that point, Bakersfield, I didn't know what they had up there, but I knew it was smaller than Orange County. And I didn't want to go. And there wasn't no divorce, no talk about that or anything. It was just send money. If you're going to go up there, send money. So we wrote. And I took it to my sponsor. And bottom line in my inventory that I wrote with my sponsor, money, property, and prestige gets alcoholics drunk. If we go up there and do that, he's not talking about the program out there or nothing. He's talking about money, property, and prestige. He's going to end up drunk if we do that, and I don't want to be there when it happens. And I said, I'm not going. And Keith did some writing, went to his sponsor and shared it with him, and he decided to turn down that promotion. And his company didn't understand it. But we both did it for our programs. And it was individual decisions. Nobody put pressure on either one of us. You know, we just let the other one do what we were doing. We didn't even know he was writing and sharing it with his sponsor.
One of the things about this tradition is about the group in our family is that this sixth tradition talks about the unity of the group. And in our house, the individual's group has had just as much authority in our family commitments as the individual sponsor. See? If Sue says, I can't go with you Sunday, I'm going to go with my sponsor, that was never a problem. If Simone had said, I can't do this, I'm going to be with my sponsor, that was never a problem. Same way with the group. Sue says, my group's going over here to do a marathon, or my group's going to do this, or my group's going to do that. That was never a problem. I think one of the reasons that it was really never ever a problem with us is because my group's a men's group. We didn't take women. You know, I mean, we have 2 campouts a year. We had things that the men did, and women don't go. See? And she had certain women's functions that she did, and men don't go. And that's pretty damn healthy, because if your obsession is another person, then to get away from that person, get away from that obsession can be healthy. You know,
and the neat part about not being together all the time when we did those things, I didn't know I could do stuff without Keith when I got to the program. And I started doing stuff that he didn't want to do, and I started doing it with Al-Anons. And when we came together, we realized that when he did this with the guys and I did this with the girls, and then we came together, we had something to share and to talk about. Besides saying, you're doing this wrong and you're doing that wrong, I just talked about, oh God, we went here and we had a marathon, we did this, and so said this, and I heard this, and it was great. It brought in unity back into our home. It brought program into our home. We went and supported Simone doing Al-Anon functions, and what happened is that we all had a primary spiritual aim. Now, all of our focus was in the same place.
We did things with Simone. We wanted to move out of that old beat-up house, and we had a chance to move out and get another house. And we tried to, fixed it up and tried to do everything. And Simone was the Al-Anon, she was a speaker at the Bakersfield Roundup, and Sunday morning speaker And soon I didn't have any commitment there, and we went to our sponsors, and our sponsors said you should go and support her. And we'd had this house up for sale, and it wouldn't sell. Nobody would look at it. It was just, and we'd actually made an offer on another house. It was just a total, everything, all the ducks weren't lining up. We were praying and praying and praying. And Simone said, look, I got this commitment. I'd like for you to go. And so we took my sponsor and his wife with us. And we went there, and Sue's sponsor was already there. And we devoted our whole weekend to support Simone and her home group, Al-Anon. And, periodically I have them little thoughts. I wonder what's happened. The realtor's trying to show that house, and everything. We went in there this Sunday morning and listened to Simone talk, and she had a beautiful relationship with her God, and the house didn't bother her. Hell, she didn't care whether the house sold or not. She was really in acceptance. And I'm thinking, God, I wonder if they're going to, and I'm sitting in there doing all that of what's the house doing and this doing and what's she doing, and Sue wants this other house and I want to get this other house. Simone sat up there and talked about God is beautiful. I got angry because she had a good relationship with her God, and I'm nuts. We come back that evening, 6 o'clock that evening, pulled up in the driveway. The realtor was locking the door on the house, walked out and said, well, I sold your house. I said, you got to be kidding me. No, I was just getting ready to leave, and a couple pulled up in here and bought this house. See, and by me putting my support into Simone and sitting there and listening to her relationship, even though I couldn't get a conscious contact with God, all I could do was just take my body and go over here and sitting in there listening to her. What are we going to do? What are we going to do now? And then pull up there, and it was so. See? If I'd have stayed home that day, I'd have probably run those people out of the driveway. What the hell are you putting in the driveway? Get the hell out of here.
Oh, before that, everybody came, he had to go wash off the driveway. That was his way of getting ready for people to see the house.
So tradition says experience has often warned us that nothing can so surely destroy our spiritual heritage as futile disputes over property, money, and authority. There is no argument. We've worried about money. We've worried about all that stuff. We've argued about it and done all kinds of things. And the amazing thing about it is our life has progressively got better in every area.
And the thing in Tradition 7 that helped me so much, every group should be self-supporting, declining outside contributions. If the lawn bothered me, my sponsor said, if anything bothers you around the house, do it yourself. If you want it done bad enough, do it yourself. Don't wait on him to do it. And don't fight about it. If it bothers you that much, do it yourself. So if it's like, if they throw down stuff and I got a resentment, I ain't picking that up, then I gotta leave it laying there until they pick up their own stuff. But if it bothers me bad enough, I gotta pick it up. And we got a sign, and we put it on Simone's bedroom door that had been condemned by the Orange County Health Department. And I couldn't go into her room for a while because it bothered me.
We've had periods of sobriety where I had a lot of money. Millions. Because I had the ability to make a lot of money. And there was a period of time when I had enough money to buy my home group a building, and be the ultimate authority, buy the property. Would have been nothing to buy a piece of property. And, I was told to take care of my family first for the long term. Instead of running down and buying my home group a building, I took my money and gave it to Mother Superior, Al-Anon, and she said, what you need to do is think about your family and retirement. Instead of running over here trying to buy something for your group, you better put something away so that your family can have some retirement, a future. See? And let AA take care of itself and let it be self-supporting. What you need to do, stupid, is to go get a job and work and quit stealing. See? And so the seventh tradition taught me to go work. Now, whenever I made that transition to seventh tradition, I set my family down. I said, tell you what, I have this ability to make lots of money. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes legal, sometimes illegal. But I have this ability to make lots of money. Always have. But what I had to recognize through this seventh tradition is that in sobriety, the way I handled the money was causing undue anxiety. And so what I had to do was get some consistency. What I was told by sponsored direction and old timers was that you need the consistency. Your family is not impressed with you coming in here one day with $3 million and coming in here another day with 50. They're tired of that. Everything you do, you're putting it on the roll. You're taught in Alcoholics Anonymous when you come in, they pass the 7 tradition, put $1. They ask you to put $1. They've done that for years. They still do it for you. And they said, you go, and then when you sit in a meeting by AA, you learn to put $1 in. Put $1 in. And I can sit in meetings and watch the people that don't put $1 in, and the rest of their programs like that. And that was the consistency of the money, to put $1 in that basket. And it's just one of my pet peeves. I sponsor guys, some of them, and they come in here with nothing, and then they get sober and they make a lot of money, and so they sit in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and they pass the 7 tradition and they pull a wad of 20s out, and they want to change a 20 or a 50 or a 100 with the 7 tradition basket. See? And Bill talks about in the traditions here about how he wouldn't buy food for his family, but he'd go down there to that AA meeting and want to pull a big, throw of 50 in there. See? And they taught me, when you go to AA, the price of admission, if AA is given you, you put $1 in the basket, which means you go someplace and get some $1 bills, and you carry them in your pocket, so when they pass that, you put that $1 in there. You don't have to impress us with your big wad of money. We're not a bank. Your responsibility is to get those ones, have them in your pocket, and when that comes around, you don't throw change, you put $1 bill in that basket. That's a responsibility before you get to the meeting. Very basic. It's necessary to get the coffee and the things, to pay for the rent and all those things. And when I did that, it was not a problem. I did that. But what I had to recognize is that I was doing the other over at the house. She said, "Can you give me $10?" I said, "Yeah, if you can break 100.
My sponsor was there one day when that happened, and we walked out, and she said, "Your self-worth's really low, isn't it?" So the next time I went to Keith and asked for money, I said, "Can I have 100?"
Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional. We define professionalism as the occupation of counseling alcoholics for fees or higher. We may employ alcoholics and so on. So such special services may well recompense, but our usual 12 steps work is never to be paid for. I mean, we went through all that counseling and all those psychiatrists and all that stuff prior to coming to the program and getting in here, so we didn't have a problem with that. We didn't have a problem with any of those things. We've never needed any marriage counseling other than sponsorship. We've had to go to AA couples and Al-Anon couples to hear the answer. We've gone, this right here is one of the things where if we had sponsorship direction that was not conducive to the direction we were trying to go, we went to couples who were going in the direction we were trying to go and got the input from the couples. And so we haven't needed any special counseling.
And it's been AA women that have helped me a lot, learn how to be a lady, tell me things that help me learn how to be a sex partner, because I was shut down in that area with Al-Anon, and it's like we have gone to Al-Anon and Alcoholics Anonymous for all of our problems.
One of the things that we had I needed help with yard work and stuff like that, and painting my house and stuff like that. And I watched some people who sponsor people, and they'd say, "Come over to my house and we'll paint the house." And so they get all these alkies over there and they paint the house, and then they go to a meeting. And so I started asking people to come and help me do my house, but I paid them. If a guy came over and mowed, get some guys over and help him mow my backyard or whatever, I may not pay him top dollars, but I had some money in my pocket to pay him because I'm an alkie. I understand the alkie don't like to work for nothing, even if it's his sponsor. And they'd always say, Sid say, "I don't know why you pay those guys. They never appreciate it." You sponsor them, you spend hours before the meeting talking to them about their personal relationships and all kinds of crap, You spend hours after the meeting, they get a problem, they come to your house, you'll spend all night. They want to come over to your house right now. They got to come over right now. And then you say, well, they want to come over and help you mow the yard, and you give the guy $5. If you spent 10 hours with him this week, Christ, he ought to come over and mow your lawn and give you $5. And I said, what you got to understand is the alkie don't like to work for nothing. And so I'm going to give them some money. You know, I'm going to give them some money.
And this tradition's the one that taught me that we recover in here because we're equals. There's no sex, color, race, or creed in this program. We're equals, and we're equals in the home. And when we got in here, it's like we weren't the adult talking down to the child anymore. Simone had a voice in our home, and she was able to say things in our home that she'd never been able or allowed to say before. But she had an opinion, whether we cared about it or not, or wanted to hear it or not, and it made us equals in our home. Okay. Tradition 9. Our groups, as such, ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those who serve. Our house isn't organized. We're not organized, but we each do things that the other one... Keith and I have recognized that we each have qualities that there's some things he can do that I can't do, and there's other things that I can do that he can't do.
In other words, we have rotational leadership.
At the airport, I'm in charge. When it comes to car maintenance, he's in charge. There's just different things like that that we've had to learn that we're not organized, but he's my service sponsor for my car, my maintenance sponsor. I have to look at him for guidance on that because I don't know nothing about that, and that kind of stuff drives me crazy. By the same token, when we're in an airport and they're not leaving on time or the tickets are messed up, he can't handle that. And so I'm the service board at the airport.
What we had to do is to split up our bills.
Yeah.
See, this tradition taught us how to split up the bill. And I don't like a lot of little paperwork, and so she can take it to work and do it at work. So she gets a lot of the little bills, and I make the big payment. Because I'm Big Daddy, and I make the biggest check. She pays a lot of the amount of money going out is pretty equal, And it's got lopsided at times, and I had to have a sponsor come over and say, look, asshole, pick up some of the slack over there.
Oh, yeah. That was a neat day. But there was a day when he quit making all the extra bucks illegally that he was doing, that he couldn't make all the payments and carry the load and be Big Daddy anymore.
I sat him down and I said, I'm not going to live this way of life with money anymore. I'm going to go get a job, and I'm going to live on a fixed income. I'm not going to have this, feast or famine stuff. And, oh, that's great, Daddy, that's good, blah, 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 And I said, what that means is I'm going to go... The year that I did that, I made over $200,000 in that one year, and the next year I made 16. That was a social shock to that family.
I was going to World Service one Saturday morning, and I went in to kiss him goodbye, and he was in there working with the bills, and I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm paying bills and I'm short. He said, I can't handle it, so you're going to have to start helping me handle this. And my sponsor told me to get ready for it, and for us to work it out. And she said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You and Keith work it out. You know how much each one of you makes. Be a team. And so I'm standing there, and Keith says, I can't do it. Can you handle these? And I looked at him, and I said, yeah, I can. And he said, okay, fine. Thank you. He said, what'd you come up here for? And I said, I came up here to tell you that I was going to World Service, kiss you bye, and tell you I love you. And he goes, well, and I said, I don't feel that way
anymore. You're going in a common goal, and so this tradition says all such representatives are to be guided in the spirit of service. And so as a family, we're guided in the spirit of service. We live in a nice house today. It's comfortable. It's clean. One of the things that this... if there's any professionalism in our home, it's the fact that we got a housekeeper. And that housekeeper, we've had that lady for almost 20 years now. And she is a curse. She's a demon, a devil. She's just everything that we should have fired her 100 years ago. She's been cleaning our house ever since New Sober. That was the thing that we got. We would not live in the filth and the unorganizing of the thing. And we agreed that Sue should pay for this housekeeper since that was her job.
Now, if I wanted that service, I paid for it.
Right.
I remember one night Keith was reading the newspaper, and he said, do you know that it says here that 85% of working women clean their own houses? And I said, yeah, well, does it say how many meetings a week they go to?
Right.
And so I got that housekeeper, and
And I got a gardener. I was having alkies come over there, and I was paying them as much as a damn gardener, and they were mowing the yard wrong, knocking sprinkler heads off. They were doing every damn thing. They were staying sober, and it's 12-step work, but I finally said, look, you get a housekeeper, clean the house, get a non-alcoholic, clean our house, and I'll get a non-alcoholic gardener to clean the damn yard, and then we'll just go to meetings and work with, crazy people.
And our housekeeper is crazy. She needs this program, but we're afraid to 12-step her because she does stuff in our house that we don't like to do.
Tradition 10, no AA group or member should ever in such a way as to implicate AA express our opinion on outside controversial issues, particularly those politics, alcohol reform, and religion. The Alcoholics Anonymous groups oppose no one concerning such matters as they can express no views whatsoever. I live in a neighborhood where they don't know I'm an alcoholic. I don't have any stickers on my car. I've been through all that stuff. When I came to AA, I had stickers on my truck, all kinds of. I was a hick, okie Texan. I had all them, always them old pickups, and I had all them, ass kickers inside, and if you ain't shit if you ain't a cowboy, and God is coming, and boy is he pissed, and all that stuff all over. And I don't put any stickers on, AA stickers on my car. I don't have any things at my house that says an alkie lives here. Cops don't come to my house. We got a gardener. We keep it clean. We don't do any of that stuff that implicates it. We don't, people come to our house and park their cars out there to have stickers on it, and I don't know whether the neighbors know it, but we don't advertise that. My neighbor, we got a new neighbor up there, and they had a pool, and they had a party, and they put flyers out all over the neighborhood. We're going to have a party tonight, get drunk, raise hell. Please don't call the cops. Let us know if it's too loud, and we'll tone it down. I have never had to put a flyer out in the neighborhood. Said I'm going to have 150 alkies over at the house. If you don't like it, go to a meeting. We got a meeting hall. We got that. We've had a shop. We've had those things so that the guys can come and go where they belong. And part of my amends to my neighborhood is to not act the same way in my neighborhood that I did when I was drunk. When I was drunk, it was like a combat zone. I had people come and going day and night. Had all kinds of crazy noises and screams and shooting on going off, and took people's parking places, parked on the yard, parked in their driveways, urinated on their bushes, threw bottles in the front yard, beer. After people, we had a party, there'd be beer bottles busted everywhere, there'd be cans of beer everywhere. We clean up after ourselves.
And the thing with this tradition that's helped me so much, it says that we have no opinion on outside issues. And I've used this so much in this program. When people want to gossip and say stuff about somebody else, and I don't really know if it's true or not true, I've just learned to say, no, thank you, I'm working the 10th tradition. And they go, huh? Because I don't have any opinion. I've had enough gossip go on about me, thank you very much. I just don't need to add to somebody else's pile if they're going through stuff.
I use this tradition in the house because Sue'd come in, she got to go someplace, she's got it narrowed down to about 3 different dresses. And so she'd come in there and say, she put this dress on, what do you think? I ain't never going to say the right thing. I know. Because she don't want to wear it either. She's already got it on. She don't want to wear it, so she got 2 more to try on, so she asked me. And I just use this tradition. I said, I don't have an opinion on it. I love you no matter what you wear.
Aww.
I love you best when you got nothing on. It just takes all the fight out of these things. If you got no secrets, see, that goes back to that 5th step. In a relationship, if you're working that 5th step and then you take those 23 tools of that 5th step, then there is no outside. There is no opinion about what. I either love you like you are or I don't. I don't have an opinion. I've accepted you. And that's the whole thing.
Okay, tradition 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, TV, and films. We need guard with special care the anonymity of all AA members. What I had learned when I was new is that if I'm going to break my anonymity, I've got to make sure it doesn't bother him. Yeah, and this tradition, my sponsor told me here a while back that this tradition gives security to the insecure, and it gives humility to the security. And so it's like, It's a personal thing with me. You know, it has to be a personal thing with you. It has to be a personal thing with Keith. You know, it's a program of attraction. And we don't promote it in our house. If I don't like what Keith's doing, I try to, rather than chew him out anymore, because I realize that anytime we have an argument, we both lose. And so I just accepted him the way he was and try to change my attitude. And if I'm not anything else on that day, if I'm not anything else, maybe I'll be a program of attraction by setting an example when somebody else in my family's in a bad mood. Same way in Al-Anon. Same way in Al-Anon. You know, we do this thing by example. It doesn't matter whether I'm in an Al-Anon meeting or I'm at home. It's attraction rather than promotion. You know, we have said things like, you need a meeting. You know, go talk to your sponsor. You know, we do those kind of promotional things in our home. And this is the tradition that is direct confirmation of the theme of our steps, which is humility.
The thing that Sue told me, I was a violent drunk and all that kind of stuff and had no compassion for anybody, and then I sobered up and I started working with other alcoholics. And Sue told me that she fell in love with me because she saw me loving on an alcoholic. She knew the violence, and my daughter knew the violence and knew, you know, the pain that I had inflicted upon them, and they had resentments against me. And yet she'd see me, you know, loving on an alcoholic, talking to an alcoholic, and they'd see how I loved this alcoholic, and I could really care for the alcoholic, and I really had compassion for the alcoholic, and I knew how they felt. And this was the healing thing. This tradition is the healing thing, the awareness that if I can love an alcoholic, I can love them. If I'm learning how, I mean, this was a saving grace for my sobriety with my family. They saw me. They had no hope that I'd ever change. Promises were all gone. And they see me over here giving an alcoholic the time. And come on, we can do it. And encouragement. We'll do it together. And I go with them to go to court. And I go with them to talk to their families. And I go with them to meetings. And I sit out there and talk to them with meetings. And Sue saw me doing the things to an alcoholic that she wanted me to do to her. And I wasn't, but I was doing it over here. And when somehow they believed, probably because of Al-Anon and Alateen, that if I can do it with an alcoholic, then someday I'll do it with them. And so they felt the attraction if he's doing it, because that's what gave them hope. And hope is a vision beyond your circumstances. Even though I wasn't able to give it to them, they could see me doing it here. If I was doing it here, this monster they were attached to may someday do it over here. And I'd go tell these alkies what they have to do, and then I'd go home and I wasn't doing it, and I felt bad. So I had to start practicing what I preached. And so it came in there. The other thing is that in this tradition is about public relations, is that I have never flaunted my AA in the workplace. I've had to break my anonymity on occasion, and it always came back and bit me in the ass. I don't break my anonymity anywhere. Matter of fact, Rick and I work together, and I'm his sponsor. And Rick got to coming up to seeing me where I work in a cubicle in an office, and Rick got to come up and see me there for a while, and he was talking about AA things. He didn't say AA meetings or anything, but he's talking about names, Bill, Bob, Mike, and Steve. And I work with a bunch of people around there who don't know Steve or Mike or Shane. And so when Rick would leave, well, they'd say, who's Steve, who's Mike, who's Shane? And they'd want me to explain who Steve and Shane and Mike was. They're AA members. And how am I going to explain that? Because next day he comes up and talks about Clyde and Emmett and, you know, and these guys, nosy normies, are sitting there, God, who are you? This guy's come up here. Who is he? Is he your son? Are you his dad? And I finally had to tell Rick, don't come up there. It's causing me problems. Not only is my boss getting tired saying, are you going to work, or are you going to talk about Steve and Bob and Mike all the goddamn time? See, I don't go to where your office is and sit in there and talk to you all day long about those people. You can't come here and talk to me. I got a job to do. See? And what I was taught in the very beginning, if I'm working a program and somebody in the work area sees that I don't go to their drunken parties, I'm not coming in with hangovers, and maybe my boss has got a son that's got a problem. And so they see that I'm not drunk, and they say, well, I don't know what Keith does, but he ain't drinking. Why don't you go ask him? And then if they come to me, I can say, well, I've always found that Alcoholics Anonymous works best for me. But I don't break my anonymity. I'll tell you why. I've worked places where I had a boss that I've seen in a detox. And then that boss started drinking again. And God damn, he hated me. He hated me because he knew everything about me. And he hated me, and he gave me the most vindictive crap. He ran me in. He gave me all the shitty assignments. He totally wasted my ass because he had that resentment against me, and he had the authority to punish me. And so I had to, go on with those kind of things and keep my anonymity. And the same thing with our home. We don't go to our neighbors or anybody else and talk to them like we talk to you. We don't talk to people about, well, what do we do to have this relationship? We can share it here, and then we talk to people, outside the deal. So that Tradition 11 is really important on our public relations. And I'm a really firm believer. I mean, it depends upon where you come from and what you did, but I'm a firm believer that this tradition here tells me that I should not live in the manner in which I did when I was drinking. In other words, my neighbors, my community, my job, those things about my... I was doing AA commitments, the damn many AA commitments that my boss called the union stirred in and asked me if I had a drinking problem. Because my absenteeism was very similar in sobriety because AA commitments as it was when I was drinking. Because I was taking off, had missed time all the time, running around doing stuff in AA, and I had to take a look at that pattern. And it was a pattern, and they saw the pattern. And I didn't want to have that same pattern in my job career as I did with my drinking. The same way as my house. I don't want to have the same respect in my neighborhood as a sober member of AA as I did whenever I was drinking.
I was at work one time, and a gal from my job came to an Al-Anon meeting, and she saw me there, and she never came back. And I was having a hard time getting some paperwork out of one of the managers one day, and I said, damn it, I need it, and I need it now. And I hung up on him, and he told everybody that I'd bragged on him. And this little gal said, well, you know why she's like that. Her husband's an alcoholic. And it was all over the building by noon. Now, so not only do I have to think about his anonymity and mine sometimes, but I have to think about others. If I see someone in this program and I'm affiliated with them in any other way, it's not my business to tell someone how I know them.
What I'm supposed to have is gratitude.
Right.
The 12th, 11th, and 12th tradition induces a gratitude. It induces a gratitude for my sobriety, for my family recovery, for the things that I have. I don't have to run around preaching it or anything in my neighborhood or anything there, or ask for special. There's been 1,000 things. I remember when I was having trouble with my work and lost time. We have an employee assistance thing, and the bottom line is this: I could have gone to employee assistance. I know the guys that are there, and I could have get up and go put some water on your face, Mike. Go on, wake up. If you want to come out here and hear this crap, you got to stay awake. You've been sleeping through this. You could have stayed at home and done that. Okay? What I had to recognize is that I could have gone to employee assistance, and I could have got special consideration with the company because I'm an alcoholic. But then I would have broken my anonymity. And then I would have done that. And I had to learn that in my home. I cannot have special consideration in my home because I'm the alcoholic.
No, doesn't cut it.
See? That's what these traditions has taught me. I don't get special favors because if I don't get my way, I'm going to drink.
He used to say, well, I'm just the alcoholic. I haven't drank today. And I was grateful that he hadn't drank today, but he was using it as an excuse. Now, if he wants to drink, he's going to drink, and I'm not going to cause him to drink, and I know that, but he's using that as a weapon on me. And it's like, neither has the cat.
I hear people, there's people in our group and relationships, and the relationship ain't going the way they want it. And say, this is making me thirsty. This is making me thirsty. Control issues. This is making me thirsty. This is making me thirsty. Not if you're working these steps, not if you're working these traditions. That's an issue that's gone back. You work that in the first step.
Not if you have a God in your life. Nobody can make you do anything that you don't want to do. And I had to learn that a long time ago.
It's so important to understand that. These traditions teach us as a group. How many times have you sat in your group, if you're being an alcoholic, I don't know what Al-Anons do, but saying, if I don't get my way, if I'm not elected secretary, I'm going to drink. What do you think your group would say? If you was an alcoholic, I'll tell you what they'd say if ours group. If you're that damn close to drinking, we sure don't want you as a secretary. See? Now we've had some weird things happen. We had a secretary of a men's meeting. It turned out to be a woman, and we didn't know it. She got busted, and they took her down and stripped her, and found out that she was a woman. And she said, call somebody from the group to come and get her out. And I said, wait a minute, that's a men's meeting, you know. So we've been disillusioned on occasion. But what you have to understand is that these traditions is unity. It does not mean that if I don't get my way or I don't do what I want to do, then I'm going to drink. This is unity so that you don't ever get to that point.
It's what brings us together where you can feel like I need help. Not I'm going to screw you up. If I don't get my way, I'm going to mess you up. If there's a God and there's unity and there's principles in here, it's like anybody will help anybody. It doesn't matter. That's the love of the program. That's the language of the heart. That's what we work for, because that's the ultimate reward around here, is that we get to pass this thing on to another human being in order to keep it. People will fail us, but principles never do.
And that's why this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is to stress the point. That's the first AA. That's the text. And people was talking to us that we've talked about it here recently, where in sponsorship.
It is more important for me to have principles in my life, and you do not like me, than for me to be the individual that you want me to be, and for you to like me.
See? And that's what the things. All of my pain and sobriety has been through personalities. You know, through sponsorship, I get involved in sponsorship, and I sponsor a person for a period of time, and then they don't want what I have, or they change, or they get a different obsession. They fire me and go off in another way. I've given them my best shot. I've given them what I had. Like my sponsor said, you know, I talk, you listen. When you quit listening, I'm through talking. And that's the principle of this thing. And by the example of what these traditions and the steps in our life, in our home, then we have a unity there. We have a family there together. It's by our individual program, applying the steps in our individual program, we have the greatest blessing, Zeal, because we always give the credit to God. See? If I'm going to take responsibility for your sobriety, I got to take responsibility if you get drunk. If I'm going to take responsibility of her being my wife, I got to take responsibility for the whole thing, the whole package. See? So the 12th tradition teaches us about principles, about the thing. I can't take any hotches. Sue and I, we work with a lot of young people, sponsor a lot of young people, take them through the steps. We have literally had young guys come into our life at 15, 16 years old, and Sue and I were their parents. 15 years old, they sobered up, and they're like little 6-year-old kids. And I've sponsored them for 10, 11 years. They sat in our kitchen and cried about when their girlfriend was pregnant. They sat in there and cried whenever their wife was pregnant. They sat in and cried when they lost their job. They sat in and cried when their girlfriend left them. They sat in and cried when their wife left them. They cried about this, cried about that in our house, just like raising a kid. And then they come along, some girl come along and say, well, get away from the drums. They're no damn good. And so they go off with them. They just walk out of our life, and they don't come over and say, gee, Mom and Dad, I want to thank you for raising me for the last 10, 12 years. We didn't do that because we're not their parents. See?
A good example of this is when Simone got married in Italy. I mean, this program is so strong and first in her life. And the girls that she sponsors is her gift, her wedding gift. They put in money together to buy an airplane ticket for her sponsor to be at her wedding in Italy. Now that's principles above personality.
Yeah, I have to look at what we put these steps and these principles in our life. We came in here beat up, beat down, and ruined. ragtag. We bought this thing packaged and sealed, the whole hook, line, and sinker. We've applied these principles in our life, and our life has gotten better. We've been together for 35 years. I haven't cheated on Sue in 19 and a half years. I haven't beat on her in 19 years. I haven't written any hot checks in 19 years. I've followed the prescription of this book pretty much, hook, line, and sinker, and so is she, and so is our daughter. As a result of that, we both have jobs. We got some money in the bank. We got a group. I got a group. She's got a group. We got sponsors. There's no conflict there. We're a comfortable living. We got some retirement. We got a nice house. Our daughter's married. She has a career. She has a group. She has people she sponsors. Her program is her number one thing in her life. And I was sitting at my desk the other day thinking about, I've, helped this alkie and I've helped that alkie and they ain't doing it and they're off doing something else. And the phone rings and it's my daughter in Italy, and she calls me up and she's talking to me about, what she's doing in the program and people she's sponsored, and she's doing good. And I hung that phone up and I thought, why should I have pain over some jackass that doesn't want to do this? I should have joy over the fact that my daughter is doing this. That's my kid. This is the lady I married. She's doing this. I don't have to take responsibility for somebody that wants to go die. If their goddamn ideas wants to take them out there and let them die, let them go die. What I have to have is joy for the fact that what I have. That we have been willing to do this, that example. It's not braggadocio. It's the fact that we came in here beat up and we've tried to do this and apply it in our life. And it works.
As a result of doing these things for ourselves, as individuals, we have come together. And we do the things in the program that we do because we want to keep it, because they said you can't keep it unless you give it away. It's a privilege. It's a privilege for us to do this. It's a privilege for us to do 12-step work. It's a privilege for us to share with other people. It's a privilege to get to go to a meeting because I don't belong here. Not somebody like me. It's a privilege for you to love me and let me love you, because that's what this program's given all of us. It's a love beyond anything I've ever had because I found a God of my own understanding.
We have a relationship with our God today because we have not sold out.
Exactly.
We have not sold out to compromising experiences or to somebody else's behavior. One of the greatest gifts of that closing prayer is lead us not into temptation. And we have had to stick with the principles of this program, which means we've had to walk away from people who tempted us, things that have tempted us, places that have tempted us, to keep a spiritual thread in our life so that we can go down this path and grow and change. And we've changed.
The grass is not greener on the other side.
And I'm going to stick with these principles one day at a time, and every time that we get a chance to come and share these things, it reinforces that. Now, next weekend, we're going to have David A. come out from Texas, who's been here for 29 years, and he's going to talk about the traditions at our home group. And I got to talk about them tonight, and you got to listen, and some of you will be there, and Sue will be there, and I'll listen to him, and I'll hear something new that I can take, even though I've shared with you tonight. I'm an open channel because of what I've done tonight, and I'll hear something from that person that will build on what I have shared with you here. I'm teachable. I'm interested in that. I'm excited about that because what it has done in our relationship and what it's given our family.
I've never quit being grateful for what this program's given us and where we're at today. And we couldn't have it by ourselves. You guys helped us get it and introduced us to a God. And thank you all very much.